Chapter 16. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that it would be so difficult for him to learn Taekwondo. He looked at Suchan helplessly, then at Zhao Yujian, who was pushing his way through the crowd with a savage look on his face. Suchan raised her head slightly. Her delicate and beautiful face was full of pride and disdain, as if what she had just said was the truth of the world. Li Yundong could feel his head starting to hurt. This girl is such a pain in the ass. Ever since I met her, I've been in trouble. What he didn't know was that since ancient times, no one who had a vixen by their side had ever come to a good end. According to the history books, the biggest similarity between Xiajie, Shangzhou, and Zhou Yu was not that they were all tyrants or incompetent rulers, but that they all had a vixen by their side. Li Yundong didn't know that the little beauty beside him was a vixen, but he did know that since ancient times, trouble had always accompanied women. The prettier the woman, the bigger the trouble. Li Yundong sighed. I just want to learn Taekwondo. Do you really have to go through all this? Zhao Yujian walked up to him with a cold smile. You've already insulted Taekwondo. You have to apologize. Before Li Yundong could say anything, Suchan interrupted him. Did I say anything wrong? If this isn't showy but impractical, then what is it? Yundong can beat you all with one hand. What the hell? Are women born to manipulate people? Li Yundong almost jumped up to cover Suchan's mouth. Zhao Yujian threw his head back and laughed. I'll be waiting for you over there, he said, pointing at the center of the arena. As he spoke, he stormed towards the arena. When the students saw him walking over, they all made way for him. They all had different expressions on their faces. Some were angry, some were eager to see the world in chaos, and some were calm. Li Yundong looked at Suchan and sighed. My dear lady, he said. You really think too highly of me. Suchan patted Li Yundong on the shoulder and said, It's okay. Didn't you send that guy flying with a kick just now? Li Yundong sighed. That wasn't a fight. Zhao Yujian is a city-level champion. I haven't even trained for a day. You don't think I can beat him, do you? Suchan was stunned and thought, that's right. Although Li Yundong has the divine power of Jindan to protect his body, he can't just take a beating. However, she quickly rolled her eyes and came up with a brilliant idea. I'll tell you one move and you'll definitely win. What is it? Li Yundong asked curiously as well. Suchan said, if he punches you, hit his fists. If he kicks you, hit his feet. When Li Yundong heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of good idea was this? What F*** King absolute victory? Zhao Yujian stood in the middle of the field, 5 feet away. He gripped his black belt with both hands. Are you done yet? If I don't make you sincerely apologize today, my surname isn't Zhao. Li Yundong was a docile donkey with a stubborn personality. If Zhao Yujian had tried to reason with him, then he would have apologized on Suchan's behalf. But if Zhao Yujian wanted to teach him a lesson with his fists, then there was nothing he could say. Zhao Yujian, you may be powerful, but I'm not a weakling. Even if I lose, I won't lose. I'll do it. Li Yundong raised an eyebrow. He steeled his resolve and strode over to Zhao Yujian. When the two of them reached the field, the students around them gathered around the white line. Some of them were sitting while others were standing. Even Zhou Qin and Ding Nan, who had always been aloof from the world, stood up and stared at the field with bright eyes. Who do you think will win? Ding Nan couldn't help but ask Zhou Qin. What do you think? Zhou Qin asked. Ding Nan thought for a moment. I know Zhao Yujian is a hypocrite and I hate him, but I still think he'll win. After all, he didn't win the city championship for nothing. Zhou Qin smiled faintly. Want a bet? Ding Nan giggled. What bet? Zhou Qin looked at the field and said casually, my handbag. Don't you want it? Ding Nan's eyes lit up. LV09 Autumn Limited Edition handbag? Okay, I'll bet. I bet Zhao Yujian will win. Zhou Qin smiled. I bet Li Yundong will win. Ding Nan gave Zhou Qin a puzzled look. Why are you so sure that this guy will win? Intuition, Zhou Qin said casually. Ding Nan laughed. I can't believe that your intuition is so accurate every time. Zhou Qin just smiled and looked at the field calmly. Zhao Yujian was already warming up his joints. He didn't underestimate his opponent at all. On the contrary, he was carefully sizing up his opponent. His cautious demeanor made the students around him feel sorry for him. They looked at Li Yundong sympathetically. This guy is going to get beaten up pretty badly. Suchan was the only one who didn't care. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, Li Yundong, you can do it. You'll win. Li Yundong turned his face away and laughed dryly. Then he turned his face away again, searching for the same feeling he'd felt when he'd punched Zheng Qing twice. But no matter how hard he tried, the feeling never appeared. It was just like Duan Yu's six-pulse magic sword. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Before Li Yundong could find the feeling, Zhao Yujian walked up to him. Are you ready? Li Yundong asked. Li Yundong had been forced to do more than he could chew. He braced himself and said, I'm ready. Since they'd already fallen out, Zhao Yujian didn't bother with the formalities of bowing to each other before the fight. Instead, he hopped around Li Yundong's side. Zhao Yujian was the city-level champion. His footwork was fast and nimble. His upper body swayed as he tested his opponent's strength. His legs crossed like a pair of scissors. Every cross looked powerful, like a folding knife that could pop out at any moment. The students around him were dazzled by Zhao Yujian's footwork. Some of the starry-eyed girls even covered their mouths and exclaimed, butterfly steps. It's butterfly steps. Li Yundong watched as Zhao Yujian darted around him. Even though Li Yundong didn't have much actual combat experience, he knew the basics of combat. Follow your opponent's movements. Don't let your opponent attack your back or waist. Don't let your opponent attack you from behind. The two of them circled around the court for a while. Zhao Yujian was starting to get impatient. He stopped testing Li Yundong and suddenly stepped into a cross step. His right leg bounced off the ground, and with a loud thud, he launched a sweeping kick at Li Yundong's waist. Zhao Yujian's kick was so fast that Li Yundong's pants whizzed through the air like a whip. Before Li Yundong could react, he felt a sharp pain in his waist. Li Yundong remembered what Suchan had taught him, so he let out a low growl and threw a punch at Zhao Yujian's leg. However, Zhao Yujian's leg technique was so fast that he pulled his leg back immediately after the kick connected. Then, he followed up with a flying kick that landed solidly on the other side of Li Yundong's abdomen. Li Yundong reflexively tried to block the kick with his hand, but as soon as he did so, another kick came at him. Zhao Yujian's legs were as fast as a whip and as fast as the wind. They landed on Li Yundong's waist again and again. The sound of the kicks was so loud that it made the hair on the back of everyone's neck stand on end. Ding Nan looked at Zhou Qin proudly. Looks like I'm going to get a new bag. Zhou Qin didn't bat an eyelid. He who laughs last laughs best, she said. All of a sudden, Li Yundong spun around as if he was trying to escape. Zhao Yujian chuckled coldly and caught up with him. Zhao Yujian turned his heel over his head and delivered a ferocious overhead kick straight at Li Yundong's head. Zhao Yujian's eyes widened in shock. The students around him jumped to their feet. If that kick landed, Li Yundong would at least suffer a concussion. Is Zhao Yujian crazy? Li Yundong isn't wearing any protective gear. Is he trying to kill someone? Li Yundong seemed to have sensed what was going on behind him. He turned around and threw a punch at Zhao Yujian's calf. He still remembered Suchan's words. If Zhao Yujian punches me, I'll hit him. If Zhao Yujian kicks me, I'll hit him. If someone who was proficient in fighting heard this sentence, he would probably burst out laughing. It was completely reckless, but Li Yundong had no choice. He had the divine power of Jindan, but he didn't know how to use it. This could be considered as trying to find a doctor in a desperate situation. Zhao Yujian snorted coldly. He abruptly twisted his leg and kicked Li Yundong in the back of the neck. Li Yundong staggered a few steps back. Zhao Yujian snorted coldly and twisted his leg in midair. This leg break was extremely stunning. The surrounding students all cried out in surprise. Flying swallow drop. If Li Yundong didn't have the protection of a Jindan, that kick would have caused serious damage to his neck. If Zhao Yujian had stopped while he was ahead, the whole thing would have been over. But Zhao Yujian subconsciously glanced at Zhou Qin, who was standing next to him. He saw that Zhou Qin was staring at Li Yundong. Zhou Qin, who was usually calm and collected, was frowning as if she was worried about Li Yundong. Zhao Yujian felt like his brain was about to explode. He wanted nothing more than to kick the bastard in front of him to death. Gritting his teeth, Zhao Yujian's eyes flashed with ferocity. He took a few quick steps forward and suddenly leaped into the air. With a somersault, he sent a side kick straight at Li Yundong's chest. This was the most powerful move in Taekwondo. It concentrated almost all of the weight and strength in the body into the kick, so the kick carried more than 1,000 pounds of force. Li Yundong's body swayed as Zhao Yujian's kick landed on him. He knew that he was far weaker than Zhao Yujian in terms of fighting skills. Since he wasn't injured, he might as well admit defeat. But then Zhao Yujian lunged at Li Yundong aggressively. Li Yundong felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. Even a man made of clay has a temper, not to mention someone like Zhao Yujian. The heat rose from Li Yundong's lower abdomen and spread through his entire body like steam from a pressure cooker. It rushed out of the top of Li Yundong's head and made his hair stand on end. Li Yundong could clearly see Zhao Yujian's movements as he leaped into the air. It was as if he was watching a movie in slow motion. Zhao Yujian did a somersault in the air and did a slow side kick. He lowered his body and threw a heavy punch at the sole of his opponent's foot. Bang! Zhao Yujian's body flew more than a meter away before crashing into the ground. Clutching his calf, he let out a heart-wrenching scream. The students in the ring were dumbfounded. They couldn't imagine how Zhao Yujian, who had the upper hand just a moment ago, could suddenly lose so badly, especially when they turned to look at Li Yundong. His hair, which had been standing on end a moment ago, was now slowly falling back to the ground. The bizarre scene shocked them even more. While everyone was still in shock, Su Chan rushed to Zhao Yujian's side and pressed a few acupoints on his calf and torso to relieve some of the pain. Chapter 17. Some of the boys who disliked Zhao Yujian whispered to each other, "I've only heard of martial arts in the world. Speed is the only thing that can't be broken. Superhuman strength is the only thing that can't be broken." A boy on the side sneered and said, "Look, aren't you ignorant? You're a widow. Haven't you ever seen Jet Li's Pugilistic Heroes?" "I've seen Pugilistic Heroes. What's going on in it? Didn't Jet Li say it in the movie? If you want to learn how to fight, you have to learn how to take a beating first. Otherwise, you can punch someone a few times and they'll be fine. But if someone punches you, you'll be knocked out. Look, Zhao Yujian kicked Li Yundong so many times and Li Yundong was fine. But if Li Yundong punched Zhao Yujian, even if it only hit the sole of Zhao Yujian's foot, Zhao Yujian wouldn't be able to take it. Of course, there's a way to learn how to take a beating, but Li Yundong's strength is nothing to scoff at. I'm starting to believe that he actually punched 500 pounds with one punch. It's not like the machine is broken." "Yeah, that makes sense. But isn't that a bit too much? Even Tyson's punch was only 498 pounds. There's no way Li Yundong's punch could surpass Tyson's, right?" This. While they were whispering to each other, Ding Nan stared at the stage with her mouth agape. After a long while she cursed under her breath, "Zhao Yujian really is a hopeless fool. He's so useless." Ding Nan sighed. Zhou Qin was kneeling on the ground with her upper body straight and her hands resting on her thighs. Even though Li Yundong had just sent Zhao Yujian flying with a punch, she had only slightly straightened her back and widened her eyes a little. There was a strange look in her eyes, but she hadn't made any other unnecessary movements. She had the bearing and composure of a lady from a respectable family. Zhou Qin tilted her head slightly and glanced at Ding Nan. There was a kind of condescending arrogance in her indifferent eyes. "It's not that easy to take my things. Ding Nan, you've been with me for so many years. Don't you understand?" Ding Nan's face froze. She smiled sheepishly. "I've been thinking about that bag for a long time." Zhou Qin stared at Ding Nan for a long time until Ding Nan felt a little scared. Then she said, "You can take my bag tomorrow." Ding Nan froze. "Why are you giving it to me again? I didn't beat you." Zhou Qin turned her head and no longer looked at her. "You don't want it? All right then." Before Zhou Qin could finish, Ding Nan immediately said, Yes. Only an idiot would reject a 5-digit limited edition handbag." Zhou Qin looked at the field, nodded, and reached out to Ding Nan. "Phone." Ding Nan immediately stood up with a smile on her face. "Wait for me. I put my phone in the locker." With that, she stood up and walked towards the changing room. When she turned her back to Zhou Qin, the smile on her face disappeared in an instant, replaced by a kind of humiliation and resentment. When she walked into the locker room, she clenched her fists and kept gasping for breath. After a while, she took out Zhou Qin's mobile phone from the locker and returned to Zhou Qin's side with a smile on her face, handing the phone back to her. Zhou Qin took the phone and immediately dialed the hospital's number. She called an ambulance and explained the situation to them. While she was on the phone, Zhou Qin's eyes fell on Li Yundong. The boy who had just shown off his prowess was now standing in the same place with a blank expression on his face. He did not feel the ecstasy of defeating a strong opponent, nor did he feel the fear of injuring or even crippling his opponent. Zhou Qin sensed that at this moment, the boy was like a loner who had suddenly barged into a strange territory. His heart was filled with confusion and unfamiliarity. He stood there silently, surrounded by all kinds of gazes: jealousy, awe, fear, hatred, anger, and envy. But all he did was look down at his fists, as if he could not believe the power he possessed. Zhou Qin smiled silently. This ordinary-looking boy was not as shallow and incompetent as she had imagined. After receiving the news, Director Qian rushed into the Taekwondo club, sweating profusely. His beady eyes quickly scanned the surroundings, then fixed on Li Yundong. He quickly walked towards him. "You again." Director Qian almost jumped up from his seat. This guy is too much of a troublemaker. 2 big incidents in 2 days. If it were someone else, they might not even get to do it once in a lifetime. Li Yundong snapped out of his daze when he saw Director Qian. His heart skipped a beat, and he thought to himself, "Oh no, I've brought this god of plague here again." As the head of the Office of Academic Affairs, Director Qian had the power to decide the life and death of the students, especially Li Yundong, who had committed a crime like this. If he really wanted to punish him, he could even expel him. Director Qian wiped the sweat from his forehead and squeezed his way through the crowd of students to Zhao Yujian's side. He took a look at Zhao Yujian's condition and groaned inwardly. There's only 1 more week before the exchange between Tiannan University and Pennsylvania Private University. Why are these students still causing trouble like this? Are they trying to make trouble for me? Most importantly, Zhao Yujian was the representative of Tiannan University's Taekwondo club. Tiannan University would be performing and having an exchange program. This was Tiannan University's best show. Seeing Zhao Yujian injured like this was a slap in the face. Director Qian's face darkened as if there was a national blackout. He stood up abruptly and walked over to Li Yundong. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he yelled. "We're all classmates. Why did you hit him so hard? Don't you know how to be polite? Do you know that this is a violation of school rules? I can expel you." Li Yundong had been nervous at first, but when he heard Director Qian's words, he became angry. "What do you mean I hit him so hard? There were so many people who saw it. Why didn't he just let me go?" Director Qian was furious. How dare this student talk back? How dare he? Where was the dignity of a university leader? Where was his authority? His uncle could tolerate it, but his aunt couldn't. Who saw it? Step out and say something. Director Qian roared, his hands on his hips. The students around him looked at each other in dismay. Even though some of them despised Zhao Yujian's character, they didn't want to offend the director of teaching for Li Yundong's sake. They still had to stay at Tiannan University. Offending the director of teaching would be worse than offending the principal. The group of students backed away from Li Yundong, but a few of them stepped forward with righteous indignation. Li Yundong was thrilled to see that there were still good people in this world. God has eyes. But soon, the students pointed at Li Yundong and said something that almost made Li Yundong vomit blood. "I can testify that he started the fight." Li Yundong was depressed. F***ck. When did I start a fight? At this thought he couldn't help but look back at Suchan, who was hiding behind him. It's all this girl's fault. Suchan felt guilty when Li Yundong looked at her. She stood up with her hands on her hips and shouted, "I said it. What are you going to do about it? If there's any crime, just put it on me. Do you want to climb a mountain of swords or jump into a frying pan? Just say it." Fi Suchan blink, "I'm not a hero." Li Yundong was angry and amused at the same time. He dragged Suchan behind him and smacked her on the head. "How dare you pretend to be a hero? Shut up." Suchan buried her head in her hands and nodded. Then she obediently tugged at the corner of his shirt and stopped talking. Even though Director Qian had seen Suchan before, it was only a fleeting glimpse. Now that he was looking her up and down, His eyes widened and he almost drooled. Which faculty are you from? How come I've never seen you before? Li Yundong saw the green light in Director Qian's eyes. Without batting an eyelid, he took a step forward and stood in front of Su Chan. She's my girlfriend. She's not from this school. Director Qian heard the harsh word, girlfriend, and saw Li Yundong standing in front of Su Chan. He couldn't hold back his anger. How dare someone who's not from this school come here and cause trouble? Li Yundong suppressed his anger. Who said that people who aren't from this school can't come here? Plus, we weren't the ones who caused trouble today. Someone just doesn't like me. So they kept stirring up trouble. Director Qian was furious. Who's stirring up trouble with you? Who can testify to that? Me. A voice rang out beside him. It was Zhou Qin walking over slowly. When Director Qian saw this, he felt a headache coming on. Why did he see this girl everywhere? Director Qian's expression changed so quickly that it would make a Sichuan opera actor die of inferiority. Hey Zhou Qin, when did you join the Taekwondo club? Zhou Qin smiled. I've been here for more than a year. I just don't come here often. Department Director Qian laughed dryly. Did you see what happened today? Zhou Qin nodded. She took her time telling Director Qian what had happened. Then she glanced at Li Yundong. That's basically it. I believe Director Qian will handle this fairly, right? The hatred in Director Qian's heart was like a raging river. Why did Zhou Qin have to protect this bastard every time? Last time was one thing, but this time? Could it be that Zhou Qin has fallen for this guy? Director Qian's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head to look at Li Yundong. Once he did, Director Qian sucked in a breath of cold air. The resentment in his heart was like the yellow river. Unstoppable. What's so good about this guy? Why did he have such a charming little beauty by his side? Why did even a great beauty like Zhou Qin have a special liking for him? Director Qian yelled in his heart. He's not even as handsome as I am. Why do these two beauties like him and not me? As a relatively successful middle-aged man, he had long been dissatisfied with his sexual desires. Naturally, his thirst for women, especially beautiful women, was growing stronger and stronger. After Director Qian watched Zhou Qin leave, he shot Li Yundong a hateful look. Follow me back to the Office of Discipline. Then he flipped his fingers coquettishly and turned to Su Chan. You too. Come with me. Following behind Li Yundong, Su Chan timidly hooked her finger at him. Li Yundong turned around and saw Su Chan mouthing to him, I'm sorry. Li Yundong smiled and pinched Su Chan's nose. Su Chan giggled and slapped Li Yundong's hand away. Thanks to Zhou Qin's intervention, Director Qian didn't dare to openly fire or punish Li Yundong. But he still had the guts to teach Li Yundong a lesson in his office. Otherwise, if word got out that Li Yundong had been punished with a word from Zhou Qin, what would happen to the Director of Discipline's reputation? What would happen to his prestige as an official? Director Qian roared as soon as he entered the Director of Discipline's office. He scolded Li Yundong until he was covered in dog blood. Since there was no one around, Li Yundong felt like he was in the wrong. Li Yundong, on the other hand, acted as if he was ready to take a beating. Mr. Director, as long as you don't fire me, you can do whatever you want. After repeatedly threatening Li Yundong with expulsion, Director Qian glared at Li Yundong. In a situation like this, he said, the Director of Discipline and the school administration will have a meeting to discuss the matter before we can decide whether or not to fire you. Also, if you cause any more trouble in the next few days, you're dead meat. No one will be able to save you. After that, Director Qian glared at Li Yundong. You leave first. I'll talk to this. What's your name again? Su Chan was confused. Why did this man want to talk to her? My name is Su Chan, she said confidently. Director Qian nodded. Su Chan, stay here. I want to talk to you. Li Yundong was surprised, but he didn't think too much about it. As an otaku who was used to keeping a low profile, he was afraid of getting expelled. When Li Yundong walked out of the office, he was shocked to find that the hallway was packed with people. Most of them were students of the Taekwondo club. As soon as they saw Li Yundong, they asked him all sorts of questions with excitement and curiosity. Li Yundong cursed inwardly. Are these assholes really that bored out of their minds? Director Qian waited for Li Yundong to walk out of the office. Then, He put on a benevolent expression and poured Suchan a cup of tea and a glass of water. He chatted amiably with Suchan. Suchan stared at Director Qian, blinking. What's this old man trying to say? Stop beating around the bush. You're so annoying. If it weren't for the fact that I don't want to cause trouble for Yundong, I would have ignored you. After a while, Director Qian finally got to the point. Suchan, he said. Judging by your looks, you're not that old, are you? Well, you're still young, so you can't see the true nature of people. It's no wonder. Even though Suchan was a blank slate when it came to the ways of the world, she was no fool. She keenly sensed what Director Qian was going to say next. What do you mean? She asked tentatively. Director Qian said earnestly, it's understandable for a man to be hot-blooded when he's young, but for a girl like you, you should consider many factors when choosing a boyfriend. You're young and beautiful, so you should consider a man who has a successful career and is mature and steady. Suchan would be an idiot if she didn't understand what Director Qian was hinting at. Suchan was furious. How dare this old man try to hit on me? He must be tired of living. Come to think of it, Director Qian must have been blinded by lust. Suchan's looks were so alluring that every man's IQ would drop by half the moment they laid eyes on her. She's so young and beautiful, I bet she'll like a mature man. And when it comes to mature, who else would I be? Thinking of this, Director Qian coquettishly stroked his divisional cadre's hair. His mind filled with fantasies. Suppressing her anger, Suchan calmly blinked her eyes and put on an innocent look. Oh, I see. I'll think about it when I get back, she said. Director Qian's face lit up. He reached out to pat Suchan's shoulder. Not bad, not bad. You're worth teaching. Suchan twisted her body and dodged Director Qian's perverted hand. Her ethereal silhouette tickled Director Qian's heart. Director Qian suppressed his lust and put on a sanctimonious face. He opened the office door and escorted Suchan out. He deliberately avoided looking at Li Yundong. Instead, he looked at Suchan passionately. Suchan, you're a good girl. I'm sure you'll be able to tell right from wrong, right? Li Yundong's eyes darted back and forth between the two of them. Suchan didn't respond to Director Qian's question. Instead, she hopped over to Li Yundong, grabbed his hand and said, Yundong, can I ask you a question? Go ahead, Li Yundong said. Suchan feigned a look of confusion. What would you do if someone spoke ill of you behind your back? Li Yundong was taken aback. Speak ill of me? Who the F***ck is talking ill of me? Li Yundong said, glancing at Director Qian. Could it be this bastard? Send Suchan away and speak ill of me behind my back? Isn't that a little too much? Suchan shook Li Yundong's hand. I said if someone speaks ill of me behind my back, Li Yundong said simply, I'll give them a good beating. After saying that, Director Qian could not help but secretly change his expression. He had a bad feeling in his heart. But what if someone wants to steal your woman? Suchan asked. What if someone wants to steal your woman? Li Yundong was enraged. No man could tolerate such a thing. He said angrily, I'll kick his balls. Suchan nodded vigorously, her face beaming with joy. Then I'll kick him for you, okay? Li Yundong didn't even think about it and immediately replied, okay. As soon as the words left his mouth, Suchan spun around and delivered a kick right between Director Qian's legs. The kick landed squarely on his crotch. Director Qian didn't expect Suchan to turn on him like that. His face turned purple, and he clamped his legs together, clutching his crotch with both hands. Without a word, he lay down on the floor. The students around them were in an uproar. Some of the male students saw Director Qian twitching in pain, and they couldn't help but tighten their legs. What are you doing, Suchan? He stammered. What are you doing? Suchan tilted her head. I'm kicking his balls. The corner of Li Yundong's eye twitched. He was speechless. Suchan lowered her head and put on a pitiful look. Did I do something wrong again? Li Yundong stared at Director Qian, who was gasping for air on the floor. He laughed dryly. No. Suchan looked up at him. Then what's with the look on your face? Li Yundong thought to himself. Oh my God, aren't you afraid that I'll be fired? Oh my God. You put the dean down. I'm going to be fired for real this time. Li Yundong turned to look at Suchan and forced a smile. It was uglier than crying. It's nothing, he said. My balls are hurting. Equals equals equals. Chapter 18. Li Yundong stared at Director Qian, who was writhing on the ground like a worm. He was sweating profusely. The students nearby were in an uproar, and the teachers nearby were immediately called over. When they saw what was happening, they were shocked. What kind of student would dare to hit a teacher? How could this be? Li Yundong knew that he was on the verge of being expelled from the university. He quickly put on a stern face and said to Su Chan, "Are you out of your mind? How dare you hit a teacher?" Su Chan was stunned and felt wronged. "You asked me to kick you." She pouted and was about to complain when she saw Li Yundong winking at her. Su Chan wasn't stupid. She knew what was going on, but she didn't say a word. Her cheeks puffed up. Li Yundong let out a sigh of relief when he saw that Su Chan didn't say anything else. He squatted down and said to Director Qian, "Director Qian, I think this is all a misunderstanding. What do you think?" Director Qian's heart was filled with hatred. He hadn't expected Su Chan to be so ruthless in the blink of an eye, but he couldn't bring himself to say anything about it. What if Su Chan spilled everything he just said? There was no one here who was stupid enough not to know what he was up to. How was he supposed to survive at the university? Director Qian gritted his teeth and glared at Li Yundong. His eyes were filled with venom. After a long while, he finally managed to squeeze a few words out of his mouth. "It's a misunderstanding. It's just a misunderstanding." Li Yundong let out a sigh of relief. He turned to Su Chan and said, "Su Chan, hurry up and apologize." Su Chan made a face at Li Yundong and Director Qian. She didn't apologize. Instead, she turned and ran. Li Yundong was taken aback. He smiled sheepishly at Director Qian. "Director Qian, do you want me to accompany you to the hospital?" Director Qian gritted his teeth and said, "No. You. Get out of here." The last word was squeezed out through clenched teeth. Li Yundong felt like he had just been pardoned. He jumped up from his seat and scurried away. He ran as fast as he could and caught up with Su Chan outside the university. He reached out to grab her hand. Su Chan turned around and yelled, "Why do I have to apologize to him? He's obviously in the wrong." Li Yundong sighed. "Yes, of course, it's this old lecher's fault. He actually dared to steal my woman. I can't wait to castrate this old guy." Su Chan's anger turned into joy. "Good idea. But if that's what you think, why do you want me to apologize?" He reached out and pinched Su Chan's cheek. "You little girl, if I get fired, I won't have any money left," he said. "I won't have any money if I get fired. Where do you expect me to get the money? Do you think it's easy for me to raise a greedy cat like you?" She reached out and slapped away his hand that was pinching her cheek. "I have hands and feet," she said seriously. "Why can't I do anything? If you really run out of money, I'll go begging with you." Li Yundong laughed out loud and sighed in his heart. In this day and age, which beautiful girl doesn't worship money? It was common to wear gold and silver, and it was even more common to wear branded clothes. If you didn't own a luxurious house or a sports car, everyone would rush to bid farewell to you. There was no such thing as a stunning little beauty like Su Chan who would seriously say to a loser like him, "If I run out of money, I'll go begging with you." Li Yundong's heart was in a mess. He reached out to pinch Su Chan's cheek again. "You make it sound like I'm broke right now. When the time comes, I'll be a male beggar and you'll be a female beggar. We'll both be male and female beggars. We'll be beggars together." Su Chan giggled and twisted her body to avoid Li Yundong's evil claws. "Shameless," she said. "Who's a male and female beggar with you? I've only heard of male and female robbers, but never male and female beggars. How shameful, how useless." Li Yundong pretended to be angry. "Wow, how dare you laugh at me? Very well, take this. Taste my breast-grabbing dragon claw." Su Chan screamed when she saw Li Yundong's deranged expression. She turned around and ran, leaving a string of silver bell-like laughter behind her as she ran. Li Yundong chased after her. The two boys and girls chased and played, attracting the attention of passers-by. At that moment, Su Chan forgot about her intention of squeezing the boy dry, and Li Yundong forgot that he was in danger of being expelled. They were having fun without a care in the world. It was early summer in May. The sun flowed like a clear spring, and the mottled trees on the road gave way to two lively figures. One was stunning, and the other was gentle. The two of them played and played, bought some groceries from a nearby supermarket, and finally returned home. Li Yundong picked up the groceries, took off his shoes and said to Su-chan, "You take a rest. I'll go make dinner." Su-chan nodded and sat on the carpet in the living room, bored. Her bright eyes rolled back and forth in her eye sockets. After a while, the sound of cooking came from the kitchen. Su-chan couldn't help but think of the delicious food Li Yundong had cooked for her last time. She couldn't help but salivate. Her heart was filled with both anticipation and guilt. I eat his food, live in his house, wear his clothes, and in the end I still have to squeeze him dry. I feel a little sorry for him. Su-chan thought for a moment, then decided to go check on him. She stood up and tiptoed into the kitchen. She saw Li Yundong wearing an apron cutting meat. Su-chan snickered and walked behind Li Yundong. Just as she was about to give him a fright, she heard Li Yundong suddenly turn around and shout with the kitchen knife in his hand. In turn, Su-chan was startled, and her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Su-chan screamed in fright and subconsciously threw a punch at him, landing a solid blow on his stomach. Li Yundong's Jindan was protecting him, so Su-chan's punch was like a tickle to him. He laughed so hard that he was rocking back and forth holding his stomach. Su-chan knew that Li Yundong had played her, so she hit him angrily. "How did you know I was behind you?" Li Yundong held back his laughter. "Don't you know there's a fragrance on you? I smelled it the moment you stood behind me." Vixens were born with a seductive fragrance. Most people could smell it, but they couldn't. Su-chan blinked and raised her arm to smell it. She looked confused. "I don't smell it," Li Yundong said proudly. "I was born in the year of the dog." You wanted to scare me, but you didn't succeed, did you?" Su-chan looked resentful and said stubbornly, "Who scared you? I saw you working hard, so I wanted to reward you." "Humph, who would have thought that you would bite the hand that fed you? You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm angry." After that, Su-chan walked out with her hands behind her back, looking back 3 times with every step she took. The expression on her face said, "Hurry up and make me stay." Li Yundong found it funny, but he didn't say anything. He turned around and continued to cut the meat. Su-chan walked to the door, but Li Yundong didn't ask her to stay. She was so angry that she bared her teeth and made a face at Li Yundong's back. But after a long time she couldn't see Li Yundong's back. Su-chan was a little dispirited. She muttered to herself that she wanted to leave, but she didn't want to. She rolled her eyes and suddenly let out a scream. "Ah!" Li Yundong thought that something was wrong with Su-chan. He was so scared that his whole body trembled, and the knife fell to the side and cut his own finger. But he didn't seem to feel it at all. He rushed over to Su-chan and looked her up and down. "What happened to you?" Su-chan laughed triumphantly and said, "You finally got scared by me." Before she could finish, she saw Li Yundong's bleeding finger. Her eyes widened and she screamed, "Ah, you're bleeding." Only then did Li Yundong realize that his finger was bleeding. He put his finger in his mouth and sucked it twice. He rubbed Su-chan's head with one hand and said with a smile, "It's okay. I thought something had happened to you. You scared me." Su-chan grabbed Li Yundong's injured finger with an apologetic look on her face. She pursed her bright red lips and blew on it. Li Yundong looked at the beauty in front of him. Her hair was like a waterfall. Her red lips were like cherry blossoms. Her white teeth were like shells, and her breath smelled like orchids. His heart skipped a beat, and he subconsciously lowered his head to kiss Su-chan's cherry lips. Su-chan saw Li Yundong coming over. She didn't know what was going on, so she raised her head. As a result, their heads bumped into each other, and they both squatted on the ground at the same time. Li Yundong covered the side of his chin. His heart was pounding, and he didn't dare to look at Su-chan. Su-chan covered her forehead. She realized that the boy in front of her wanted to kiss her. Her heart was beating like a drum, and her expression was a little unnatural. Li Yundong stood up and coughed. "I'll cook. Wait for me in the living room. If you're bored, you can watch TV." He didn't look at Su-chan. He walked quickly to the living room and turned on the plasma TV. Su-chan followed Li Yundong with her head down. She pulled at the hem of her shirt with both hands and kept her head low. The atmosphere was awkward. Li Yundong scratched his head and said, "I'm going to cook." After that, he left the living room as if he was running for his life. Suchan knelt on the carpet and watched him leave the living room. Only then did she let out a sigh of relief. It was as if she'd been suffocated by the boy's presence just a moment ago. Suchan couldn't help but feel distressed. Oh no, he's trying to make love to me. But in his current condition, if he does that, he'll die of ejaculation. Not only will he waste his Renuan Jindan, but he'll also lose his life. What should I do? Chapter 19. Surprised, Suchan turned her head and stared at the TV with wide eyes. She couldn't understand why there was a human voice coming from the TV. Curious, she moved closer to the TV, touched it and tapped on it. Back when Little Fox was cultivating in the mountains, she had heard her master talk about the situation at the foot of the mountain, including iron cars that could run, planes that could fly, and so on. However, she had never seen television before. Suchan tapped on the TV for a while, but she couldn't find anything special about it. Her interest waned, and she couldn't help but think about her relationship with Li Yundong. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, the image of a tank slowly raising its cannon appeared on the TV screen. The cannon was slowly raised, and then there was a loud bang. The little fox shuddered in fright. In a fit of rage, she threw a punch at the TV. Li Yundong, who was in the kitchen, heard the noise and rushed out to take a look. He was petrified. The TV on the wall had fallen off the wall and broken in half. Electric sparks were still sizzling from the broken part. Li Yundong was dumbfounded. He stammered, What's going on? Suchan pointed at the TV. Someone's trying to scare me in there. Li Yundong almost fainted. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is a TV. Don't you know what a TV is? Suchan looked confused. I don't. Li Yundong was so upset that he was going to cough up blood. Why are you playing dumb with me, you stupid girl? I just wanted to kiss you. Do you really have to take revenge like this? This time the TV, which was worth at least 5,000 meters, vanished into thin air. Suchan noticed Li Yundong's dark expression. Are you angry? She asked cautiously. Li Yundong looked at her timid face. She looked like a child who had done something wrong. His heart was filled with anger and displeasure. How could he say anything harsh? He forced a smile. No. Li Yundong dragged the broken TV out of the door, planning to throw it away when he went downstairs. Then, he would find time to buy a TV that was exactly the same. Otherwise, if the landlord saw it, he would be in trouble. After what had happened, the meal was rather dull. Even though Lan Weihu was still eating without a care in the world, Li Yundong was eating his food so slowly that it tasted like he was chewing wax. No matter how stupid she was, Suchan knew that she'd gotten into trouble again. Feeling guilty, she hid in the bedroom early. After Li Yundong cleaned up the room, he lay on the carpet and stared at the chandelier hanging from the ceiling. He was lost in thought, thinking about what had happened today. Li Yundong thought back to how he had sent Sung Qing flying with a kick and sent Zhao Yujian flying with a punch. He felt as if he had just been in a dream. In the past, Li Yundong would never have dared to even think about doing something like that. Over the past few days, Li Yundong had come to the realization that some kind of change had happened to him. It was definitely not some kind of potential. Who could force themselves to unleash their potential all day long? Li Yundong knew that the best special forces soldiers in the world could use their thumb and index finger to exert thousands of kilograms of force in an instant and crush a piece of ice the size of a thumb. However, this required deliberate control of the secretion of adrenaline. In other words, they had to squeeze out their potential and do things that normal people couldn't do. However, this came at the cost of overdrawing one's life and potential. If used too many times, one could even risk death. Li Yundong thought about how many incredible things he'd done these past few days. If he'd overdrawn his potential, he'd have kicked the bucket a long time ago. But he was still alive and kicking. This meant that something must have happened to him. Something had changed in his body, but he couldn't tell what it was. However, Li Yundong was sure that this change was definitely a good thing. Lying on the carpet, Li Yundong felt a surge of excitement. His whole body was filled with energy, and he couldn't wait to vent it all out. The more Li Yundong thought about it, the more excited he became. He jumped up and threw a punch at the air. Bang! The punch seemed to have opened the valve of all the blood vessels in his body, making all the meridians in his body surge with hot blood. Li Yundong felt like his whole body was on fire. An inexplicable power was like a constantly expanding and fermenting dough, filling every blood vessel, every muscle, and every strand of hair in his body. Li Yundong took a lunging step and threw another punch. As he did so, his hair stood on end with a swoosh. However, Li Yundong was so focused on feeling the power in his hands that he didn't notice this anomaly. The little fox, who had been hiding in the room, heard the commotion outside and quietly opened the door a little. She took one look at Li Yundong's condition, and her heart leaped with joy. Great! Has he finally noticed the Jindan power in his body? Especially when she saw Li Yundong's angry expression. The smile on her face was so wide that it was as if she was looking at a delightful crop. Little Fox knew that this was a sign that the blood qi in a human body had reached its peak. It was like pulling the plug on a pressure cooker, and the yang energy in the body was gushing out of the Bai Hui acupoint on the top of the head. In the Taoist school that Little Fox had come into contact with, Taoist cultivators believed that the human body had three major essences: essence, qi, and blood. The human body also had three dantians: the lower dantian of the abdomen, the middle dantian of the heart, and the upper dantian of the brain. The lower dantian contained essence, the middle dantian contained qi, and the upper dantian contained spirit. Taoist cultivators believed that as the blood flowed, the essence and qi in the middle dantian of the upper dantian of the head would be transported together with the blood to the upper dantian of the head, thus achieving the three flowers at the head. This process of transferring essence, qi, and spirit to the head and refining the three flowers into spirit was commonly known as the small zhoutian. When Su Chan massaged the three major acupoints on Li Yundong's head with the three-prong flower technique, she was passively letting Li Yundong practice the small zhoutian. However, doing something passively wasn't as effective as doing it actively. Even though Li Yundong was swinging his fists at the moment, this unconscious method of causing the blood in his body to boil and rush, resulting in the three flowers at the head, secretly coincided with the cultivation of the small zhoutian. Little Fox snickered inwardly. She knew that only when the three flowers were all gathered at the top of the head could one cultivate the spirit. This spirit wasn't the spirit of the gods, but the spirit of the mind. It was the most mysterious junqi of cultivators, also known as spiritual power. As long as Li Yundong cultivated the three flowers at the head, to a certain level, the spirit he cultivated would be able to use to look at his internal organs. That way, Li Yundong would be able to begin the great zhoutian cultivation of the 5 qis unifications. As long as he completed the three flowers at the head and 5 qis unifications, Li Yundong would be able to officially start the foundation establishment phase and become a true cultivator. Once Li Yundong succeeded, Little Fox would be able to harvest yang energy to nourish her yin energy. Little Fox couldn't help but smile at the thought. But after a while, she suddenly remembered how good Li Yundong had been to her. For some reason she felt a pang in her heart, as if she was choking. He stole my Renyuan Jindan. 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 She repeated the words a few dozen times before she felt a little better. Li Yundong had no idea what was going through Su Chan's mind. He was so excited that his whole body was trembling. This unprecedented feeling of power made him feel like he was about to swell, burn, or even explode. Li Yundong thought back to his fight with Zhao Yujian and the various leg techniques that Zhao Yujian had used. He suddenly had the urge to imitate the high kick that Zhao Yujian had used. As soon as the thought crossed his mind, Li Yundong's qi and blood surged to his right heel, stimulating the tendons in his leg to stretch and contract violently. Suddenly, the tendons in his entire leg were pulled apart. Li Yundong steadied himself on the tip of his foot and kicked his leg upwards. It was a high kick with perfect posture. Even a Taekwondo grandmaster with the 9th Dan black belt wouldn't be able to find any fault with this move. Li Yundong was ecstatic. Before this, he couldn't even move his body in a straight line. Now he could kick his heel all the way to the top of his head. At that moment, Li Yundong even had the illusion that he was invincible. He looked up and saw the chandelier in the living room. Without thinking much, he jumped up and kicked the chandelier. The tip of his foot hit the chandelier that was more than 2 meters high. With a clang, the chandelier shook violently. Li Yundong had only done it on the spur of the moment. He wanted to see if he could hit a chandelier that high, but he really did it. The feeling of satisfaction, accomplishment, and excitement mixed together made Li Yundong so happy that he raised his arms and shouted, "Yes!" But not long after he shouted, he heard a creaking sound coming from above his head. He looked up and saw the chandelier on the ceiling shaking for a moment. Then with a loud bang it came crashing down on his head. Li Yundong was smashed right into the wall. He screamed as he hugged the chandelier and fell backward. Suchan, the little fox, stood at the door and laughed. Li Yundong covered his head and sat up. He glared at Suchan, but the little fox laughed even harder. Li Yundong's face turned red from Suchan's laughter. He pretended to look like a fiend and lunged at Suchan. Suchan laughed in surprise and quickly slammed the door shut. Li Yundong rubbed his forehead and nose at the door. He walked to the carpet and looked at the chandelier under his feet. Then he looked up at the huge hole in the ceiling. He smiled bitterly. This is great. Blessings never come in pairs, but misfortunes never come alone. The TV is broken, and the chandelier is broken too. Is today the day I lose money? == Chapter 20. Suchan stuck her tongue out at Li Yundong without saying a word. Li Yundong took Suchan out for breakfast after throwing out the trash. After that, the two of them headed back to school. As soon as they stepped into the school, Li Yundong realized, to his dismay, that there were even more people pointing fingers at him and Suchan. Hey, did you see that? That's the guy who knocked out Zhao Yujian yesterday, Li Yundong. Holy shit. He doesn't look like he's trained. Did Zhao Yujian slip and fall on his own? What the f***ck? Do you think slipping and falling would cause a fracture in his calf? Let me see you throw one. What? I don't have such a high level of skill in wrestling. Ever since Li Yundong had taken the Renyuan Jindan, his hearing had become extremely sensitive. He could clearly hear the whispers around him. Zhao Yujian had a comminuted fracture in his calf? Li Yundong was shocked. Is it really that bad? Li Yundong turned to Suchan and said, "The guy I knocked out yesterday has a fracture in his calf. Do you think I should go to the hospital?" Suchan wasn't born cold. It was just that the strong preyed on the weak in the cultivation world. She had never heard of a strong person going to the hospital after beating up a weak person. She snorted and raised her head, saying, "Your skills are inferior. Yet you are so arrogant and domineering. You deserve it." Li Yundong thought for a moment, then nodded. If he hadn't been so aggressive that day, he wouldn't have ended up like this. The two of them walked into the classroom. As soon as they sat down in the back row, Sun Li, the class monitor, approached them with a smirk on her face. "Li Yundong, you've been doing pretty well lately, haven't you?" Sun Li sneered. "What did I do to piss you off again?" Li Yundong asked innocently. Sun Li gritted her teeth at Li Yundong's innocent face. "You've been too much of a troublemaker these past few days. First you broke one of Zhang Qing's ribs, then you fractured Zhao Yujian's calf, and then you kicked Director Qian's leg. Are you going to beat up the principal next?" Li Yundong felt a little annoyed by Sun Li's impolite questioning. "I'm not the one who started this," he said, stiffening his neck. "If you don't believe me, you can go and ask them. Is it reasonable for me to just lie there and let them beat me?" "What about Director Qian?" Sun Li asked through gritted teeth. "What about Director Qian?" Li Yundong almost blurted out that Director Qian had tried to poach Li Yundong, but he refrained from doing so. After all, if he were to reveal this to the public, Director Qian might fall out with him. That wouldn't end well for him. Li Yundong sighed and said, "This is just a misunderstanding. Director Qian doesn't intend to pursue it. Why are you so concerned about justice?" Sun Li shot to her feet and pointed a finger at Li Yundong. "He doesn't want to pursue her anymore." Let me tell you, Director Qian called the principal last night and said that he wants to expel you. You'd better watch yourself." Li Yundong was shocked. "What? How did you know?" Sun Li snorted coldly. "How did I know? You're probably the only person in the school who doesn't know about this. How dare you be so carefree?" After that, she turned around and walked away, her ponytail still bouncing from side to side. Li Yundong sat in his seat in a daze for a long time. He was so frustrated that he didn't even notice the teacher had come into class. It wasn't until a girl sitting next to him nudged him that he snapped out of his daze. Li Yundong looked at the girl. It was Feng Na, the girl from the Taekwondo club who had asked him for an autograph. Li Yundong felt uncomfortable, so he sneered and said, "Are you also here to make trouble for me? Who caused you trouble?" Feng Na asked in confusion. Li Yundong realized that he had vented his anger on the wrong person. "I'm sorry," he said apologetically. "I made a mistake. What do you want from me?" As a student of Tian'an City University, I'm sure you've heard about the exchange day with the University of Pennsylvania in 7 days, right? Feng Na sighed and looked at Li Yundong with a serious expression on her face. Li Yundong tilted his head in thought. "I think I've heard about it. Why?" Feng Na sighed again and looked at Li Yundong with a resentful look, which made Li Yundong's hair stand on end. "Hey, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't look at me like that. You make it seem like I've done something to you." Feng Na glanced at Su Chan, who was sitting next to Li Yundong. "Hey," she said quietly. "Of course you wouldn't be interested in someone like me." Su Chan stared at them with wide eyes. "Your chest is full," she said suddenly. "You might not be tall, but you're more than generous. You have jet black hair, thick eyebrows and bright-spirited eyes. You might not be as good as the mysterious cauldron I saw last time, but you're still a good cauldron. Why don't you have sex with Li Yundong? I won't mind." Sex. The killing power of this sentence was too great. Li Yundong was just as dumbfounded as a wooden chicken. A guy sitting in front of them fell out of his seat and stared at Li Yundong with an exaggerated look on his face. He gave him a thumbs up and said, "Dude, where the hell did you get yourself a hot chick like this? How the hell did you get yourself a hot chick like this? You're awesome." The corner of Li Yundong's mouth twitched. He let out a dry laugh. "This girl always talks nonsense," he said to Feng Na. "Just pretend you didn't hear her." After that, he turned his head and glared at Su Chan. "Shut up. What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm not talking nonsense," Su Chan said indignantly. Then she pointed at Feng Na. "Isn't she a good cauldron?" Li Yundong was furious. He was just about to retort that Su Chan didn't look like a good cauldron when he saw the students around him gaping at him from the corner of his eyes. It was as if he was a rapist who specialized in picking beautiful women as his cauldrons. Li Yundong's face turned red under the stares. He wanted to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. But before Su Chan could finish her sentence, the girl said to Li Yundong with a straight face, "Look at her eyebrows. They haven't spread out yet. She's obviously a virgin." "A virgin?" The students around Li Yundong gasped. They looked at Feng Na in a different light. Li Yundong pounced on Su Chan and covered her mouth. He wanted to sew it up with a needle and thread. "Say another word," he growled. "I'll spank your ass when we get back." Su Chan struggled. "Even if I spank your ass?" Li Yundong laughed. "Then I won't cook for you. I'll starve you for 2 days." Su Chan immediately became obedient and stopped struggling. She just looked at Li Yundong pitifully with tears in her eyes. "Don't you like Chaner anymore? Why do you want me to starve you for 2 days?" A boy next to Li Yundong looked at Su Chan's pitiful face. "I like you," he said. "I'll cook for you." Li Yundong was so angry that he kicked the back of the boy's seat and said angrily, "Get out of here." Li Yundong turned to Su Chan and said, "Be a good girl and don't talk. I like you. Do you hear me?" Su Chan nodded. Then she buried her head in her seat. However, she kept glancing at Feng Na out of the corner of her eyes. Her expression seemed to say, "She's a perfect furnace for a virgin." I was right. Feng Na sat next to Li Yundong. Her face was so red that it looked like blood was going to drip out of it. She didn't even know where to put her hands. If it weren't for the fact that she had something important to talk to Li Yundong about, she would have run away a long time ago. Li Yundong was also surprised that Feng Na hadn't run away yet. He laughed dryly and said, "Don't mind her. She's just like that. What do you want from me?" Feng Na raised her head and glared at Li Yundong, her face red. "It's all your fault." Li Yundong felt wronged. "What did I do?" Feng Na had never been teased like this in her life. She vented all her anger on Li Yundong. "If it weren't for what you did, why would I come to you?" "What you did?" "What? Got yourself pregnant?" The male students were gnashing their teeth in hatred, thumping their chests and stamping their feet. You bastard! You already have such a beautiful little girl. Yet you still want to flirt with a beautiful senior sister like Feng Na. You're such a playboy that even the heavens are angry at you. The students around them burst into an uproar. Their ears perked up. Their gossipy souls were burning. I just met you yesterday. What did I do to you? Li Yundong yelled. Feng Na panicked when she saw that Li Yundong was denying it. What did you do yesterday? Have you forgotten it already? Whoosh! The look in everyone's eyes changed again. They looked at Li Yundong like he was a heartless man. The boys burst into tears again. Their collective resentment intensified. You just met him yesterday, and you're already pregnant with a fetal pearl? Holy crap! Is there anyone with such accurate marksmanship? The girls looked at Feng Na sympathetically and sighed in their hearts. This senior sister is really unlucky. Why did she fall for Li Yundong and this little beauty who's as beautiful as a vixen? Are they all blind? Feng Na thought. Why did she fall for such a guy? This guy has neither money nor talent. At the very least, you should have picked someone more handsome. Now you're pregnant with his child, aren't you? Do you need an abortion? This kid looked like someone who couldn't afford to take the responsibility and couldn't fork out the money. You know you're going to suffer, right? However, some of the more experienced girls had a vague feeling that something was wrong. How could anyone get pregnant the next day? But the drama was so exciting that they didn't want to think too much about it. One by one, they turned to look at the back row. In such a large trapezoidal classroom, not a single person was looking at the blackboard. The pitiful young teacher, who taught the history of China's modern literature, stood alone on the podium. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He wanted to give a lecture, but there wasn't a single person in the classroom who was listening. How was he supposed to teach? He wanted to lose his temper, but all the students in the classroom were like this. The law does not punish the masses. The teacher stood on the podium, caught between a rock and a hard place. He couldn't help but feel sorrow welling up in his heart. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he sighed. Public morals are getting worse by the day. Chapter 21. Unfortunately, Feng Na's mind was in a mess after what Su Chan had done to her. Now that Li Yundong had denied it, Feng Na lost her temper. What the hell is wrong with you? She yelled. Don't you have any sense of responsibility? Do you think you can pretend that nothing happened just because you messed around yesterday? Messed around? The classroom burst into an uproar. The innocent boys stared at Feng Na with wide eyes. How bold and unrestrained! They exclaimed. As expected of senior sister. The naive girls covered their mouths and glared at Li Yundong. He's so heartless. How could he do this to me? The rest of the impure boys exchanged meaningful glances and laughed in a way that only men understood. Their laughter was strong enough to make the Japanese celebrities feel inferior to death. Some of the fujoshis were even more aggressive. They simply began to talk among themselves. Dragon and Phoenix War? Threesome? Is there some kind of erotic flower? At this time, no matter how stupid Li Yundong was, he realized that there was something wrong with the conversation. He looked around and whined. He covered his face with his hands and said, "Beauty, look around yourself. Don't you think there's something wrong with what you just said?" Feng Na looked left and right before she came back to her senses. Her face turned even redder as she mumbled, "Then let's not talk about this anymore. Let's talk somewhere else." This time, the students in the classroom couldn't take it anymore. "Don't change the place," they said. "This place is fine. Senior sister, let's expose Chan Shimi's true colors in front of the people. Senior sister, we support you." "Yes, senior sister, we want the truth." While the students were making noise, they heard a particularly loud voice. "Show us the pictures." Everyone turned to look and saw the teacher standing on the podium shouting at the top of his lungs. The students below the podium fell silent. They all looked at the teacher with meaningful eyes. The teacher didn't have stage fright. He straightened his collar and said slowly, "No pictures, no truth." The students came to a sudden realization and shouted, "We want the picture, we want the truth." There were even some who were bored and shouted, begging for seeds. When he shouted, all the students in the classroom laughed so hard that they staggered from side to side. The teacher even stopped the class and squatted on the podium while laughing. He seemed to be enjoying it. Li Yundong spat out 3 liters of blood. Hatred filled his heart. This bunch of birdmen who only wanted to see the world in chaos. Even the teachers in this F***king trashy university are so indecent. If the upper beam is crooked, the lower beam will be crooked. Li Yundong dragged Feng Na out of the classroom like he was running for his life. Su Chan followed closely behind him. Feng Na was pulled along by Li Yundong in a daze like a mechanical puppet. Behind them, the classroom was like a pot of boiling porridge. It was so chaotic and noisy that it was like a pot of boiling porridge. As soon as they stepped out of the classroom, Feng Na felt a gust of wind in the corridor. She jolted awake and shook off his hand. "Why are you holding my hand?" she yelled angrily. Li Yundong said angrily, "Do you think I want to? Think about what you just said in the classroom. Is that something a human should say?" Feng Na remembered what she had said in the classroom. She knew it was inappropriate, but she refused to admit defeat. "Isn't it because of the pretty girl next to you? Did I say something wrong?" Su Chan pouted and said, "Did I say something wrong?" Li Yundong saw that the 2 girls were about to go at each other. He quickly tried to smooth things over. All right, he said. "Now is not the time to talk about this. Senior Feng Na, I don't have any grudges against you. What do you want from me? Why are you making it so serious? You knocked Zhao Yujian out of bed with 1 punch. What are you going to do about the Taekwondo exchange meet in 7 days? He's the star of our school's show." Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "What does that have to do with me? Can't I just find someone else to replace him?" Feng Na snorted. "Find someone else to replace him?" Zhang Qing, the only one qualified enough to replace him, was knocked out of bed by you. How are you supposed to replace him? Li Yundong stared blankly at Feng Na. "No way. What should I do?" Feng Na put her hands on her hips and posed like a giant teapot. "What should I do? What else can I do? Who caused this? Who's going to take responsibility? Who caused this?" Li Yundong asked in a daze. "You want me to replace Zhao Yujian at the exchange meet?" Li Yundong asked, jumping to his feet. Feng Na gave him a look of approval. That's right. That's right. No way." Li Yundong yelled. "I don't know Taekwondo." Feng Na grabbed Li Yundong's arm. "You put down Zhao Yujian," she said. "You must have trained in Taekwondo. There's no reason you can't replace him, is there?" Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "If I had trained in Taekwondo, I wouldn't have been beaten so badly by Zhao Yujian. That was a coincidence." "What a coincidence. Let go of me. Hey, let go of me. I don't want people to see this." Feng Na's grip tightened. "I'm not letting go. Promise me first. You're the one who caused this. Can't you take responsibility for it?" Li Yundong was sweating profusely. Students and teachers passing by in the hallway were all staring at them. "Holy shit!" Li Yundong yelled. "Look, there's a plane." Feng Na sneered. "You think you can fool me with this childish trick?" Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "I really don't know Taekwondo. You want me to replace him? It's not a big deal. It's a big deal for the school." Feng Na froze. She unconsciously let go of Li Yundong's arm. "You really don't know Taekwondo?" Li Yundong looked sincere. "I really wanted to go to the Taekwondo club to learn Taekwondo yesterday, but I didn't expect to be welcomed so warmly. I didn't want that to happen either. But you can't just force me to do something beyond my capabilities, can you?" Feng Na studied Li Yundong carefully, as if trying to discern whether he was telling the truth or not. After a while she said, "Fine, you win. I'll let you go for now. But don't get cocky. It's not over yet." Li Yundong clasped his hands in front of his chest and bowed. "All right, madam, that's enough. See for yourself," Li Yundong said, pointing at the window next to the classroom. Feng Na turned her head to look and was shocked. Wow, the window was packed with heads. Some of their faces were squeezed against the window, so much so that they were deformed. Feng Na gasped. She glared at Li Yundong, composed herself, and walked into the classroom. As soon as she walked into the classroom, the group of students by the window turned to look at her. Feng Na coughed dryly and bowed. "Sorry for the disturbance. I apologize for the inconvenience." The students in the classroom responded in unison. Oh. Feng Na saw the strange looks in everyone's eyes, so she explained, actually, I'm looking for Li Yundong because of the exchange meeting with the American University in 7 days. Please don't overthink it. There's really nothing going on between us. Li Yundong covered his face with his hands. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is it true that looks and IQ are inversely proportional? Su Chan is ridiculously beautiful. It's one thing for her to be so paranoid all the time, but why is this girl like that too? What the hell are you trying to explain? The more you explain, the less people will believe you. When Feng Na saw the suspicious looks in everyone's eyes, she couldn't help but say anxiously, I really have nothing to do with him. I just met him yesterday. Li Yundong wanted to drag Feng Na out of the classroom and give her a good beating. Oh, everyone in the classroom said, understanding dawning on them. Seeing that the more she explained, the more they didn't believe her, Feng Na became anxious. What do I have to do to make you believe me? No picture, no truth. One of the students yelled. Then the group of male and female animals shouted, seeking the truth, seeking the seed, seeking the link. Damn it. This school is hopeless. What a bunch of sluts. Li Yundong was on the verge of breaking down. He rushed into the classroom and dragged Feng Na out of the classroom like an animal. Are you a pig? Li Yundong cursed. What the hell are you trying to explain? Is your brain full of mush? If you can explain things like this, then the world will be peaceful from now on. Feng Na was on the verge of tears. There's nothing between you and me. Li Yundong smacked his forehead. Oh my God. Can someone save me? Why do I keep meeting such a stupid woman? Feng Na was furious. You called me stupid? You're the stupid one. Li Yundong glared at Feng Na. You're not stupid. They say that women with big breasts have no brains, but you're the one with flat breasts. Did all the fat in your chest go to your brain? Feng Na was furious. She might not be a flat princess, but she was still a C-cup. It was one thing for people to call her a woman with big breasts but no brains. But if someone called her a woman with flat breasts but no brains, then what was the point of being a woman? Feng Na puffed out her chest. What do you know? My chest is flat. Li Yundong wanted to say something else, but he saw that the windows and the doorway were crowded with people. Their eyes were filled with fanaticism. It was as if they couldn't wait for him and Feng Na to have a good fight. Li Yundong waved his hand. I'm done talking to you. Besides, my IQ has dropped along with yours. Li Yundong waved at Su Chan, who was squatting on the floor and laughing. Hey stupid girl. Get up and go. Laugh? Laugh your ass. Don't you feel embarrassed staying here? Su Chan wiped away her tears, rubbed her belly, and chased after Li Yundong. Feng Na was left standing there, gritting her teeth until a girl came up to her. Nana, she said weakly. You've met your match this time, haven't you? Feng Na snapped out of her daze. She glared at the girl, then at Li Yundong's back. Shut up, she said hatefully. That bastard. I'm not done with him. I've suffered a big loss this time. Feng Na was the prettiest girl in the finance department in her junior year. She came from a well-to-do family. Although she had always been the apple of everyone's eye, she had a cheerful and lively personality. She didn't have the slightest bit of arrogance. Everyone had been giving in to her ever since she was a child. She had never suffered a loss like this before, especially when people called her flat-chested and brainless. This was definitely more irreconcilable than killing one's father or stealing one's husband. Feng Na gritted her teeth for a while, then turned her head to look at Li Yundong. To her surprise, the sophomore was still staring at her, waiting to see what would happen next. Feng Na was furious. She turned around and walked away, cursing Li Yundong as she walked. After a while, Feng Na seemed to remember something. She stopped dead in her tracks and stared at her best friend. Cheng Cheng, she said. Are my breasts really that small? Cheng Cheng's best friend didn't say anything. Instead, she just stuck out her F-cup breasts and sighed. Feng Na immediately flew into a rage. She pointed her fingers at the sky and roared. I want to kill all the women in the world with bigger breasts than me. Cheng Cheng hugged her chest and said, Then you'll be the only woman left in the world. Feng Na pounced on her with bared fangs and brandished claws. Do you want to die? Come here. I'm going to crush your breasts. Chapter 22. The more she thought about it, the more depressed she became. The more she thought about it, the redder her face became. She hugged her books and buried her head in them like an ostrich. This is so embarrassing, she yelled in frustration. I won't be able to show my face in public ever again. Feng Na said. How embarrassing. After a while, a boy sat down next to Feng Na. He was tall and muscular, and his arms were especially thick. Nana, he said with a fawning smile. What's wrong? Feng Na looked up and saw the boy who was always clinging to her smiling at her. She rolled her eyes. Zhou, get out of my face. Can't you see that I'm pissed? I don't want to see you right now. Zhou froze for a moment. Displeasure flashed in his eyes, but he kept his smile. Nana, who pissed you off? Tell me, and I'll teach him a lesson for you. Feng Na waved at him. Get out of my face. I'm on my period, okay? Get out. You don't want to get out? Fine, I'll get out. After that, she packed her bag and rushed out of the classroom. Her movements were quick and agile, not like a girl on her period at all. Zhou sat in his seat stunned. He turned to Feng Na's best friend, Cheng, and said, What the F***ck? Did she eat gunpowder today? Cheng Cheng giggled. Why don't you take a guess? She made a money-rubbing gesture with her fingers. Zhou chuckled and said, Sister, I won't forget you. Tell me what's going on. Cheng Cheng pointed at Zhou and said, I want 2 VIP tickets from Golden Age. Zhou had a troubled look on his face. When Cheng Cheng saw this, she immediately packed her bag. Zhou hurriedly stopped her. Okay, 2 tickets, right? No problem. Tell me what happened. Cheng Cheng told Zhou about how Feng Na had been humiliated by Li Yundong. As soon as Zhou heard the story, he jumped 3 feet high, rolled up his sleeves and rushed out. Feng Na waited for Cheng Cheng to come out of the classroom. She stared at her with wide eyes. What did you say to Zhou? Why is he rushing out like his ass is on fire? Cheng Cheng looked smug. What do you think I said? Feng Na thought for a moment and said, Did you tell him about me and Li Yundong? Cheng Cheng snapped her fingers and said, Bingo, I got 2 Golden Age VIP tickets. Feng Na was so angry that she laughed. Are you crazy? Zhou was a martial artist and had practiced iron wire punch before. His kung fu is as good as Zhao Yujian's. Cheng Cheng snorted. Zhao Yujian was already half crippled by Li Yundong. Are you still afraid that your little lover won't be able to beat him? Feng Na was furious. She reached out and grabbed Cheng Cheng's chest. What did you say? What little lover? Are you courting death? You hateful big-breasted girl. I'll squeeze your breasts until they explode. Cheng Cheng clutched her chest and laughed. Good. You're afraid that Zhou will be taken advantage of, aren't you? I can't tell. You're usually cold to him, but you're actually passionate. Feng Na laughed and scolded, You little slut. You're getting more and more presumptuous. I don't care if these 2 stinky men die. I hope they die together. That way I don't have to worry about them. The 2 of them laughed and joked around for a while. Cheng Cheng patted her chest and said, You should worry about yourself first. As the art committee member of the student council, how are you going to fill in for Zhao Yujian this time? At the mention of this, Feng Na became depressed. She frowned and said, Yeah, what should we do? Cheng Cheng was a quick-witted girl. Oh right, I heard that there's a junior named Zhou Qin in our sophomore year. Not only is she our school's #1 campus belle, but she also has an amazing background. Also, I heard that Li Yundong confessed to her a while ago. Why don't you ask her to beg Li Yundong and see if it works? Feng Na rolled her eyes. What kind of stupid idea is that? You think a little girl can handle something that even I can't handle? Forget it, Cheng Cheng said. You're only 1 year older than her, okay? Stop pretending to be a middle-aged woman. Feng Na said angrily. You're tired of living. How dare you undermine me? I said I won't beg her, and I won't. Cheng Cheng raised her hands in surrender. Fine. I won't say anything else. I'll let you know one last thing. I don't care if you don't beg Zhou Qin, but aren't you afraid that Li Yundong and Zhou will get into a fight? Feng Na's expression froze. Come on, let's go check it out. Li Yundong ran out of the classroom early. He was too ashamed to go back, but he didn't know where to go, so he had no choice but to wander around the campus with Su Chan. As they wandered around, Li Yundong's mind wandered to other things and the fact that Director Qian was going to fire him. He was so frustrated that he wanted to scratch his ears and scratch his cheeks. They wandered around aimlessly until they reached the entrance of the campus. As soon as they stepped out of the gate, they heard a loud yell. Li Yundong, stop right there. Zhou Yu had been asking around for Li Yundong's whereabouts, but when he found out which class Li Yundong was in, he didn't see Li Yundong in class. So he had no choice but to leave the classroom and ask around. Fortunately, Li Yundong had become quite the celebrity these days. Quite a few students recognized him, especially the little fox that was always by his side. She had left a deep impression on them. Quite a few students immediately pointed him in the right direction, and Zhou Yu followed the trail to where Li Yundong was. Li Yundong froze. He turned around and saw a boy, who was about 1.8 meters tall, striding toward him. As soon as he reached Li Yundong, the boy reached out and grabbed Li Yundong's shoulder with his fingers like hooks. Zhou Yu's grab felt like a show of strength. If he managed to grab Li Yundong's shoulder, he could easily dislocate Li Yundong's shoulder. Li Yundong might have the power of a Jindan, but he didn't have any actual combat experience. How was he supposed to know all the tricks up his sleeve? Su Chan, on the other hand, had sharp eyes. She could tell that the boy wasn't friendly, so she slapped Zhou Yu's hand away. Then she glared at Zhou Yu. What do you think you're doing? As soon as Zhou Yu saw Su Chan, his eyes widened and he almost couldn't speak. Just as he was about to say something, he remembered how close Su Chan and Li Yundong had been. His heart immediately ached and his jealousy flared up. Zhou Yu ignored Su Chan and stared at Li Yundong. Hey, what did you do to Feng Na today? Feng Na? Li Yundong's head throbbed at the sound of that name. Would you believe me if I told you that I didn't King do anything to her? Zhou Yu sneered at Su Chan's tight grip on Li Yundong's arm. This guy is most likely a second-generation rich kid. He only knows how to use money to trick little girls. He has a pretty girl by his side, and yet he still messes with Feng Na? Damn it. I'm going to teach you a lesson today. You didn't do anything? Zhou Yu said coldly. Then why is Feng Na so mad? Li Yundong rolled his eyes. She's the one who said something stupid. How can you blame me for that? Hearing this, Zhou Yu was seething with anger. Fine, you heartless bastard. You've done something wrong and you're blaming it on a woman. Are you even a man? Come out if you have the balls. I'll fight you one-on-one. Just as Zhou Yu was about to explode, Li Yundong stopped laughing and said, You can walk straight ahead for 50 meters, then turn right for 100 meters. Take the number 533 bus and get off at the Municipal People's Hospital. I suggest you go to the psychiatrist department to have your brain examined. Zhou Yu said. Zhou Yu was about to burst into laughter when he heard Li Yundong's words. Zhou Yu's hands balled into fists. What did you just say? Then he threw a punch at Li Yundong. The punch was so fast and fierce that it startled Li Yundong. But Su Chan reacted quickly and blocked the punch with her hand. Zhou Yu was on high alert after being blocked twice in a row by Su Chan. He knew that Su Chan was probably a martial artist as well. Plus, the fact that she was able to block his punch meant that her kung fu was probably better than his. Zhou Yu didn't want to get into a fight with Su Chan, who was so beautiful that it made his heart itch. He had no choice but to point his finger at Li Yundong. Are you even a man? The only thing you know how to do is hide behind a woman. Su Chan couldn't take it anymore. Hey, what the hell are you talking about? Yundong isn't afraid of you. I can take on 10 people like you with one hand, let alone Yundong. No matter how good-tempered Zhou Yu was, he couldn't tolerate such words. He glared at Su Chan. What did you say? Su Chan made a face at him. Hey, I can beat up 10 people like you and I won't find it too much. Shut up. Zhou Yu yelled. You shut up first. Su Chan said. Li Yundong turned to Su Chan and yelled. Shut up. Don't you think you've caused enough trouble for me? Su Chan was startled, and her previous arrogance immediately disappeared. She hid behind Li Yundong obediently, not saying a word, like an obedient wife. Li Yundong turned his head and said to Zhou Yu, Do you know what the Compendium of Materia Medica describes a person like you? Zhou Yu glared at Li Yundong. What is it? Li Yundong sneered. There's no cure for those who are mentally disabled. Suchan burst into laughter at Li Yundong's words. Zhou Yu flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was about to attack Li Yundong when he heard someone yelling at him. He turned his head and saw a group of hooligans rushing towards them. They pulled out iron bars and wrenches from their waists. As they ran, they shouted at him, "Little bastard, stop! I'll kill you!" Li Yundong could see that these people were none other than Xie Fei and Lu, the ones who had chased him all the way to school. Zhou Yu was shocked. He might be a martial artist, but he couldn't handle so many people. And they even had weapons. Plus, these people weren't here for him. They were here for Li Yundong. Zhou Yu hurriedly jumped to the side, waiting to watch a good show. "Idiot, hurry up and run. I won't laugh at you." Li Yundong's temper flared up. This time he didn't turn around and run. He remembered how he had punched 500 pounds with one punch, sent Sung Qing flying with one kick, and shattered Zhao Yujian's calf with one punch. Then he remembered the powerful feeling of power he had experienced in the living room last night. A kind of restless, fanatical power pulsed through his veins and roared. Li Yundong's blood boiled like a wild beast in his veins. His pupils shrank, and his strength exploded like a bomb. His blood flowed to his thighs like a pump. Then his thighs drove his calves, and his calves drove his feet and tendons. Li Yundong's whole body shot up. One of his legs stood on one leg, and the other leg struck out like a battle axe. Chapter 23. Cheng Cheng's eyes were sharp. She nudged Feng Na and pointed not far away. "Hey, look who's over there." Feng Na followed Cheng Cheng's gaze and saw Zhou Qin and Ding Nan, each holding a sun umbrella, walking out of the school. Of the two girls, one was dressed fashionably, sexy and elegant, while the other was dressed simply, youthful and beautiful. They were like a moving landscape, attracting attention wherever they went. Although Feng Na was also a beauty, she was far inferior to Zhou Qin in terms of appearance and temperament. "Why are you looking at her?" Feng Na asked sourly. Generally speaking, most beautiful girls like to find a girl who is not beautiful as their female companion, Cheng Cheng said in confusion. "Why does Zhou Qin like a top-notch beauty like Ding Nan?" Feng Na sighed and said, "A beauty like Zhou Qin doesn't need to be complimented by leaves. Only a broken flower like me would find a little maid like you to set off my beauty." Feng Na said softly as she made a pitiful gesture. Cheng Cheng burst into laughter. While the two of them were chatting and laughing, they suddenly heard a loud noise coming from the school gate. Cheng Cheng looked in the direction of the noise and immediately jumped to her feet. "Li Yundong!" Feng Na was startled as well. She saw a group of gangsters rushing toward Li Yundong with iron bars in their hands. Feng Na immediately screamed, "Li Yundong, run!" But as soon as her voice fell, she saw that Li Yundong did not run. Instead, he dashed forward like a windmill, standing on one leg and swinging a battle axe with the other. With a whirlwind kick, he knocked down one of the gangsters in front of him. There was a saying in the Book of Quan, "The fists are two doors and the kicks are all about kicking people." In combat, the legs are always longer than the hands. Li Yundong swept his leg through the air and landed a vicious kick on one of the gangsters. The gangster's iron bar did not even hit Li Yundong before he was sent flying like a sandbag. An inch longer, an inch stronger. After sending a gangster flying, Li Yundong did not stop at all. He spun like a spinning top, and with every spin he kicked out a whirlwind kick. Every time he kicked, someone would be sent flying. The students in the surroundings were already petrified. They could only hear the whooshing wind from the kick. It was hair-raising. If they were to close their eyes and listen, they might even think that there was a strong man swinging an axe. Feng Na and Cheng Cheng were stunned. Cheng Cheng tugged at Feng Na's arm. "Hey, are you sure this isn't a kung fu movie?" These gangsters had been following Xie Fei around for the past few days, trying to find trouble with Li Yundong. Today they had finally found an opportunity, but they hadn't expected Li Yundong to be so aggressive, as if he had taken some kind of drug. Li Yundong's consecutive whirlwind kicks sent chills down their spines. Some of the gangsters surrounded him, not daring to move for a moment. They kept glancing at their companions lying on the ground out of the corner of their eyes. Some of them regretted their actions. "If I had known this guy was so tough, I would have brought a knife with me." Xie Fei stomped his feet in anger. "What are you waiting for? Go. There's no need to be afraid of a small number of people." The gangsters who had surrounded Li Yundong all around him shouted and charged at him, waving their iron rods. Li Yundong sneered. He couldn't help but think of the leg technique he had used during his fight with Zhao Yujian. He quickly stepped forward and lifted his leg high above his head. Then he swung it down like a battle axe. Li Yundong sneered at Zhao Yujian. Feng Na cried out in surprise, "Axe strike!" Just as she finished speaking, she saw that although the hoodlum used his hand to block his head, he was still struck to the ground. As soon as Li Yundong knocked down a man, the gangsters next to him had already surrounded him. Li Yundong immediately turned around and moved quickly with small quick steps. His feet were like butterflies flying through the air. Thud! 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 There was a series of muffled sounds. Before the onlookers could even see which foot Li Yundong had kicked, the gangsters were already lying on the ground, moaning in pain. Chung Chung was stunned. "I think I know that move. Isn't that Zhao Yujian's signature move, the butterfly flying kick?" Feng Na was shocked. This bastard pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. How dare he say he doesn't know Taekwondo? Zhou Qin and Ding Nan were standing not far away from Li Yundong. Both of them were stunned. "So strong." Ding Nan stammered. Zhou Qin didn't say anything, but her widened eyes showed how shocked she was. Zhou Qin had witnessed the fight between Li Yundong and Zhao Yujian. At that time Li Yundong was clumsy and couldn't dodge Zhao Yujian's fierce attacks at all. He could only rely on his own brute force to bring Zhao Yujian down. But in just one day, Li Yundong had suddenly become more agile and strong. Every kick he threw was elegant and fierce. Every move he made was free and easy. He looked much stronger than Zhao Yujian, who had been immersed in sex for so many years. How is this possible? Zhou Qin was shocked. He didn't know anything about Taekwondo a day ago. Taekwondo was just as Little Fox had said, it was inherently flawed. There were too many openings and flaws, making it difficult to use in actual combat. However, this kind of combat technique was very flashy and beautiful. It was definitely not a problem to use it against gangsters and hooligans. Zhou Qin learned Taekwondo because it could be used for self-defense, and it was flashy and beautiful. Plus, it could also be used to train her body. In her eyes, Zhao Yujian was a good fighter. But if she let Zhao Yujian fight Li Yundong again, Zhao Yujian wouldn't be able to withstand a single move from Li Yundong. Xie Fei stared blankly at his partner, who was rolling around on the ground and wailing in pain. Then he stared at Li Yundong with wide eyes. He couldn't believe that the guy they had chased around a few days ago could be so fierce. Who the hell are you? Tell me your name." Xie Fei wanted to leave, but he couldn't stop talking to Li Yundong. "What does my name have to do with you?" Li Yundong sneered. "Good. Very good. Looks like you don't want to live here anymore." Xie Fei sneered. Li Yundong sneered. "I've already beaten up so many people, so it doesn't matter if I beat up one more." Li Yundong sneered. He was about to step forward when he heard a loud roar behind him. "Motherfucker! Move one more time and I'll kill her." At some point, Lu had circled behind Su Chan and wrapped his arm around her neck. Then he roared at the top of his lungs. Li Yundong turned around to look at Lu. He was instantly enraged. A surge of heat rushed up from his chest and popped like a cork being pulled out of a bottle. The heat shot up from Li Yundong's chest all the way to the top of his head. His hair stood on end, and his eyes widened in anger. He looked like a crazed beast. "If you touch a single hair on her, I'll cut you into pieces." Li Yundong's aura was terrifying. All the students around him were shocked. The man in front of them was like a ferocious tiger, ready to devour them at any moment. Lu's heart was pounding. His first instinct was to turn around and run, but he was confident that he had a hostage. He calmed himself and smiled coldly. "I'm going to touch her. What are you going to do about it?" Xie Fei burst into laughter when he saw that the tables had turned. "Good one, Lu. Bring this chick back to us and we'll have a good time." Just as he was about to step forward, Su Chan suddenly elbowed Lu in the chest. Lu bent over in pain. Then Su Chan followed up with a high kick. The tip of her foot landed on her own shoulder, and her foot landed on Lu's forehead, sending him tumbling to the ground. Su Chan's move was clean and neat. It was so fast that it was hard for the eyes to follow. Before anyone could react, Suchan had taken down the gangster behind her in the blink of an eye. Everyone gasped in surprise. Holy shit! That was so cool. Both of them have practiced martial arts, right? One is stronger than the other. Is this a movie? Where's the camera? Where's the director? Li Yundong rushed to Suchan's side. Are you all right? He asked anxiously. Suchan smiled sweetly. I'm fine. Then she turned around and kicked Lu, who was lying on the ground, twice. She aimed her kicks at his vitals. How dare you touch me? Do you have a death wish? She yelled. Some of the boys around them saw this and felt a chill run down their spines. They couldn't help but clamp their legs together. Zhou Yu, who had been looking for trouble with Suchan earlier, subconsciously averted his eyes when Suchan turned to look at him. His balls were hurting. Li Yundong quickly pulled her back. All right. If you kick him, I'll have to pay for his medical bills, won't I? After Li Yundong finished speaking, he turned his head and saw that Xie was secretly trying to run away. He immediately became furious and chased after him. He grabbed the guy with golden hair and said fiercely, What did you just say? Xie didn't dare make a move even though Li Yundong had grabbed him. Instead, he straightened his neck and shouted, How dare you touch me? Do you know who I am? Li Yundong laughed angrily and slapped Xie across the face. I don't care who you are. What the F***ck did you just say? Say it again. Xie lost a tooth from Li Yundong's slap. How dare you hit me, he yelled. You're dead. You're dead. Li Yundong was so angry that he slapped Xie 4 times in a row. Blood filled Xiefei's mouth, and a few of his teeth fell out. After that, Li Yundong picked Xie up and said, What did you just say? Say it again if you have the balls. Xiefei's mouth was full of blood. Good, he yelled. Good. Beat me to death if you have the balls. Otherwise, I won't let you go. At this time, Li Yundong's essence, qi, and blood were boiling to the extreme. It could be said that it was the time when a person's courage was at its peak, and he was angry. When he heard this, he immediately became angry and became bold. He pressed his palm on Xiefei's head. With a ferocious smile on his face, he said with a murderous look, You want to die? That's easy. As he spoke, he tried to twist Xiefei's neck with all his might. At this time, Li Yundong had his back to the crowd, so no one could see the ferocious murderous look on his face. They thought he was just trying to scare Xie, but Xie could clearly see the fierce murderous look in Li Yundong's eyes. He was so scared that his whole body trembled. He was too familiar with this kind of look. It was definitely a look that would only appear when there was a murderous intent in his heart, and he wanted to kill someone. Xie was scared. He was really scared. Even if he had a powerful background and people supporting him, he would have to wait until he was alive to see it. This guy, he definitely wanted to kill him. He only felt Li Yundong's palm on the top of his head, as if the sky above his head was covered in darkness. There was only the haze of death in front of him. Xie was so scared that he wet his pants. He shouted hoarsely, No, don't kill me. I was wrong. Let me go. Li Yundong stopped what he was doing and stared at Xie. You know you were wrong? Xiefei's heart trembled when he saw Li Yundong's electric gaze. He lowered his head and said, I know I was wrong. Please let me go this time. I won't dare to do it again. Li Yundong was not a ruthless person. His anger had come and gone quickly. He let go of Xiefei's hand and stood up. He kicked Xie and said, Take your men and get out of here. Xie said. Xie didn't dare to look at him. He just timidly helped his men up from the ground, covered his face with one hand, and got ready to leave. Li Yundong looked at their backs and shouted, Hey? Xie heard his voice and shivered. He turned around, his eyes filled with humiliation. What else do you want? Li Yundong pulled out all the 500 yuan he had on him and threw it at Xie. This is all I have. Take them to the doctor. Xie saw the stack of money fall at his feet. He gritted his teeth and squatted down to pick it up. Thank you, he said in a low voice. Chapter 24. Zhou Yu had seen what Li Yundong was capable of, And he didn't think he could beat Li Yundong. You just finished your fight. Even if I beat you, it wouldn't be an honorable victory. He turned to Su Chan and said, let's go. Damn it, I've met a bunch of crazy people today. Li Yundong was so angry that he burst into laughter. Su Chan nodded and was about to leave with Li Yundong when a voice called out, Li Yundong, wait. Li Yundong turned his head and saw Feng Na running towards him. As soon as he saw the girl, he suddenly felt a headache coming on. I say, madam, what do you want? Feng Na might have seen Li Yundong's amazing skills earlier, but she wasn't afraid of him. She grabbed Li Yundong's arm and yelled, you said you don't know Taekwondo. You were lying to me. Li Yundong was speechless. He smiled bitterly. Would you believe me if I told you that I learned Taekwondo yesterday? Would you believe me if I told you that I didn't believe you? Feng Na said. Would you believe me if I told you that I didn't believe you? Li Yundong bowed. I said, please let me go. Feng Na bowed as well. I said, please do me a favor. I'm your first fan. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then I'll make you my idol. I'll be your first fan. Stop bothering me. Li Yundong, no matter what, you were the one who hurt Zhao Yujian. You have the responsibility and obligation to settle this matter. Unless you're not a student anymore, I won't come looking for you. Li Yundong threw his head back and laughed. I really won't be a student anymore. Feng Na froze. What do you mean? You want to transfer schools? Li Yundong chuckled and said, someone wants to fire me. Who? Feng Na said angrily. Who would be so stupid at a time like this? If you want to expel someone, do it after the conference. As soon as Feng Na finished speaking, Chang Chang coughed dryly beside her. Feng Na realized that she had made a slip of the tongue. She turned to Li Yundong and laughed dryly. Who the hell wants to fire you? I still have some influence in the student council. I'll go and plead for you. Li Yundong glanced at the growing crowd around him. Director Qian, he said in a low voice. Oh, Feng Na said with a look of understanding. I see. I'll help you put in a good word. However, let me say this first. If I can help you convince them, you have to help me. Li Yundong thought for a moment. Seemed to be a good deal. He sighed and said, but I really don't know how to do it. What can I perform? It's not like I can shatter rocks on my chest, right? Zhou Yu, who was at the side, seized the opportunity and mocked. You're only capable of performing such a lousy show. Li Yundong was furious. His eyebrows shot up. You? Come here and practice. Feng Na said angrily to Zhou Yu, get out of my way. You have no right to speak here. After being yelled at by Feng Na, Zhou Yu took a step back and said bitterly, I won't teach this guy a lesson for your sake. Li Yundong glared at Zhou Yu. I'll cut you to pieces when I get the chance, he thought. Feng Na said to Li Yundong, hey, do you agree or not? Just give me a definite answer. Li Yundong was getting annoyed by Feng Na's pestering. Fine, fine. I'll do it if you can help me settle this. Feng Na's eyes lit up. So what are you going to perform? Shatter bricks? Kick wooden planks? Or something else? Li Yundong waved his hand impatiently without looking back. Do as you see fit. After Li Yundong left, Feng Na snapped her fingers at Cheng Cheng. Done, she said. Like I said, there's nothing I can't handle. Cheng Cheng, on the other hand, was not as happy as Feng Na. She kept giving Feng Na meaningful looks. Feng Na followed Cheng Cheng's gaze and saw that all the students were staring at her in confusion. Cheng Cheng sighed. You're finished. The thread about you chasing after Li Yundong is going to be the hottest thread on the school forum tonight. You won't be able to explain yourself even if you want to. Feng Na was at a loss for words. It's all that bastard's fault, she said angrily. Damn it. Then she turned to Cheng Cheng. By the way, do you have the registration form? Cheng Cheng rummaged through her purse. Yeah. Why? Feng Na gritted her teeth and said, write Li Yundong's name down. Cheng Cheng froze. Aren't you afraid that Director Qian won't be able to handle it? Feng Na snorted coldly and said, is there anything I can't handle when I take action? Write it down. Write it down now and submit the form. Oh, Cheng Cheng said. What kind of show? Feng Na snorted. Didn't you hear him say it before? What did he say before? Cheng Cheng asked, confused. Smashing a boulder on his chest. Feng Na said with a sly smile. Didn't he say that himself? Smashing a boulder on his chest. Chung Chung stammered. Smashing a boulder on his chest? What day and age are we living in? Feng Na glared at Chung Chung. Do you remember that? Chung Chung had no choice but to write it down. She couldn't help but shudder at the memory of Li Yundong performing that boulder on his chest during the exchange between the two universities. Li Yundong had no idea that Feng Na had set him up. He brought Suchan home with him. After a while, his anger slowly subsided. Suchan followed him quietly, her eyes fixed on his face. She observed his emotions carefully, afraid that she might say something wrong and make him angry. Suchan looked at Li Yundong, her eyes fixed on his face. After a while, Suchan saw that although his face was still serious, the anger in his eyes had completely dissipated. She said, Yundong, don't be angry. Li Yundong glanced at her and snorted coldly, thinking that if it weren't for the fact that she was so paranoid all day long, there wouldn't have been so many problems. When Li Yundong didn't respond, Suchan shook his arm and said coquettishly, Come on, don't be angry. I'll just never talk to you again. Li Yundong gave her a sideways glance. Can you stand it? When Li Yundong didn't say anything, Suchan pouted and rolled her eyes. Then she said tentatively, I'll give you a kiss. Can you not be angry? This sentence made Li Yundong furious, but he could only turn into running water and dissipate in an instant. His heart was moved, but he was too embarrassed to respond immediately, so he just hummed and said yes. Suchan immediately gave him a quick peck on the cheek. The feeling of her soft lips on his cheek almost made him feel like his bones were about to go limp. After the kiss, Suchan grabbed Li Yundong's hand and said, You're still ignoring me? What are you thinking about? Li Yundong couldn't keep a straight face anymore. He touched the cheek that Suchan had kissed and said helplessly, I was thinking about which street we should go to beg. Maybe we'll have a better business. Suchan giggled and fell to the carpet with her arms around her stomach. You good for nothing, she said. Why do you always think about things like this? Li Yundong snorted. You're such a wastrel. You don't know how hard it is to live. Come on, let me do the math for you. Look, the TV broke, so we need to buy a new one. It's 5,000 or 6,000, right? The chandelier is also good. That's a few hundred, right? I lost a few hundred in the fight. Now it's more than 7,000, right? Zhao Yujian was the one who started the fight, but I'm sure I'll have to pay the medical fees. I don't know how much it will cost. He was doing the math when he suddenly saw Suchan looking at him with a worried expression. The pitiful look in her big, watery eyes almost melted Li Yundong's heart. You won't despise me, will you? Suchan asked in a trembling voice. Her voice was sad and melancholy enough to move a man. Li Yundong regretted his decision when he saw Suchan's expression. Am I crazy? Why am I doing this to a little girl? Girls like her are meant to be doted on and loved. What kind of man am I to do this to her? Shouldn't a man withstand the wind and rain, withstand all the pain and suffering, and leave only sweetness and happiness for his woman? Thinking of this, Li Yundong couldn't help but feel proud. He reached out and pinched Suchan's delicate and small nose. Silly girl, why would I dislike you? He said. Suchan let out a yelp and dodged his hand. You don't have money, do you? She asked. Li Yundong had made up his mind not to bring up the topic of money again. He laughed. Of course not. I still have money. Don't worry about it. His parents had given him a lot of money since he was a child, and he didn't have the habit of being extravagant. He had been saving the money, and now he had about 100,000 yuan. Although it was a large sum of money, it wasn't too much for him to make ends meet. Suchan had always been an otherworldly little fairy, so she had no idea how hard it was to make money in the world. Hearing Li Yundong's words, she believed him and felt relieved. She cracked a smile and said, You're so annoying. You only know how to scare me. Seeing her smile like a flower, Li Yundong felt warm in his heart, as if he wasn't afraid of the sky falling down. He deliberately kept a straight face and said, Will you be obedient in the future? Suchan nodded her head like a chicken pecking rice. Chaner will be obedient. Seeing her obedient look, Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. He coughed and said seriously, Well, I'll believe you if you kiss me now. Suchan giggled. Didn't we kiss before? Li Yundong couldn't help but smile. Then kiss me again. Suchan jumped to her feet and ran to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. No, absolutely not. Li Yundong chased her to the door, only to have the door shut. He hung his head dejectedly. He looked at the carpet in the living room and then at the closed bedroom door. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Am I destined to be a departmental cadre in the future? Suchan leaned against the door. Thinking about what Li Yundong had said, she couldn't help but feel conflicted. He's doing it again. What can I do? But why can't I keep a straight face every time I want to distance myself from him? Suchan was getting more and more annoyed. She grabbed her hair and squatted down, muttering to herself, what the hell am I supposed to do? Damn it. Suchan had no idea that she was a fox spirit herself. Foxes were the most yin creatures in the world. And after Li Yundong swallowed the Renyuan Jindan, he became the most yang creature in the world. Yin and yang attracted each other. Even an ordinary man and woman living together would develop feelings for each other, not to mention that one of them was the most yin and the other was the most yang. Their mutual attraction was several times stronger than that of ordinary people. Suchan squatted on the floor and spaced out for a while. Suddenly, she heard Li Yundong call her name. Suchan jumped to her feet in shock. What is it? She asked in a flustered voice. That guy. He didn't hurt you, did he? Li Yundong asked, stammering. Suchan snorted. Them? I can take on 100 of them. Don't worry. Li Yundong was silent for a moment. Don't put yourself in danger next time, Suchan, he said. If anything happens, I'll be there. Suchan wanted to retort, but for some reason she swallowed her words. She felt a warm feeling in her heart. Oh, I got it. Okay, Li Yundong said. I'm going to take a nap. I still have classes in the afternoon. Suchan leaned against the door and listened to Li Yundong's footsteps as he left. She couldn't help but think of the look on Li Yundong's face when he found out that she was being held hostage. The little fox's conflicted heart slowly melted, and the smile on her face slowly softened. Her large, bright eyes flashed with an indescribable light. Even the little fox herself couldn't tell what kind of feeling this was. However, this feeling was sweet, warm, and made one's heart throb. Where are the flowers? Where are the collections? The numbers are so ugly. Chapter 25. It wasn't the first time Suchan had eaten Li Yundong's cooking, but she still gobbled it down like a hungry wolf. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he tried to snatch the food away from her. But the girl actually bared her teeth at him. Holy shit, Li Yundong said, laughing. Why are you still so protective of your food? Suchan burped after she was done eating. She looked at Li Yundong sheepishly. It's so delicious. Li Yundong shook his head and smiled. Looks like I'll have to cook for 4 people next time. This isn't even enough for 2 people. I didn't even get to eat anything. The little fox blushed and said, I'm sorry, I ate all your food. Li Yundong waved his hand. As long as you're full. Suchan lowered her head shyly. Actually, I'm only 30% full. Li Yundong plopped down on the carpet and stared at Suchan in horror. Then he picked up the empty rice pot and showed it to Suchan. You ate at least 3 bowls of rice by yourself. Are you a pig? Suchan was stunned. The little fox pouted. But I'm just hungry. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't tell me you're still developing. Suchan puffed up her chest proudly. I finished developing a long time ago. Li Yundong's eyes fell on Suchan's perky chest. He couldn't help but swallow. Due to Suchan's naivety, she had the personality of a child. However, her figure was perfect. She was about 1.65 meters tall, with a slender waist and long legs. Her entire body was so well proportioned that it was almost flawless. She didn't look like a child at all. She was wearing Li Yundong's sweatshirt, and even though it was a little loose, her breasts were still bulging. Li Yundong guessed that she was at least a D-cup, and since Suchan clearly didn't have the habit of wearing a bra, her breasts were barely visible. It was a sight that drove Li Yundong crazy. Li Yundong chuckled dryly. He didn't dare look any longer. afraid that he'd act on impulse and do something beastly. I'm going to wash the dishes, Li Yundong said, standing up and clearing away the dishes on the coffee table. Li Yundong walked into the kitchen and lowered his head to wash the dishes. His mind was filled with thoughts of Su Chan's seductive appearance. For a moment, he felt his blood rush to his head, and his nose became wet. He subconsciously wiped it with his hand and suddenly realized that his nose was bleeding. F***ck, no way! Li Yundong exclaimed. I can't be so useless, can I? How could he have such an exaggerated nosebleed? Su Chan heard the commotion and walked in to take a look. She saw Li Yundong looking up, his neck and chest covered in blood from his nose. Are you bleeding? Su Chan exclaimed and rushed forward. As soon as Li Yundong saw Su Chan come in, he immediately turned around with a flushed face. He even wanted to kill himself. If this girl thinks that I'm fantasizing and she gets a nosebleed because of it, I'll die of laughter, he thought. It's okay. Li Yundong blocked her with his hand, not wanting her to get close to him. Su Chan grabbed Li Yundong's hand and gently patted the back of his neck, then the top of his head. She giggled. It's okay, she said. Lower your head. Li Yundong lowered his head tentatively and found that he had indeed recovered. He looked at Su Chan in surprise. You just patted me twice and you're already healed? He said. That's amazing. Yeah, my master taught me, Su Chan said with a smile. Your master really is a capable person, Li Yundong said. Suddenly, a thought occurred to Li Yundong. I got a nosebleed because of the hot and dry weather. Don't think too much about it. All right, Su Chan said with a smile. I know everything. Li Yundong wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Huh? She knows everything? Oh no, my image is ruined. Li Yundong's nosebleed was obviously not a good thing, Su Chan thought. Nosebleeds could happen under a few circumstances. One was when the capillaries in the nasal cavity ruptured when the nasal cavity was hit hard. 2 was when the pores expanded and ruptured when exposed to heat. 3 was when the qi in the body lost control of the blood. Li Yundong was in the third situation. Qi was the commander of the blood. It ruled the blood. Only when a person had enough qi could the blood flow faster, and the nutrients in the body follow the blood to all parts of the body. If a person didn't have enough qi, the blood flow would be too slow, which would lead to blockages in the meridians and lead to diseases. The blood vessels in the nasal cavity were the weakest blood vessels in the body. If there was a problem with the qi in the body, it would react. The reason why Li Yundong had a nosebleed was that the qi in his body was too strong. Moreover, he had been furious before, which had caused the qi in his body to become restless, thus driving the blood in his body to flow rapidly. He was like a high-speed train that couldn't control its momentum, resulting in a nosebleed. That was why Su Chan thought it was normal for Li Yundong to have a nosebleed. However, it also meant that Li Yundong's internal qi was a little messed up, which was why he couldn't control his blood flow. Su Chan waited until Li Yundong was done with his work and sat down. Then she went to his side and said in a sweet voice, "How about I give you a massage?" Li Yundong was overjoyed, and his previous depression was thrown out of the window. He thought to himself, how can I have such treatment after having a meal with a beautiful woman? What an immortal life. I only envy Mandarin ducks, not immortals. Li Yundong wanted to lean against the sofa and sit down, but Su Chan made him sit cross-legged on the carpet. She stood behind him and gave him a gentle massage. Su Chan didn't use the three-pronged flower technique this time. That was because a person's qi and blood were at their most vigorous when they had the three-pronged flowers at one's prominence. People were the most irritable at that time. That was why people were so angry. Right now, Li Yundong's qi was in a mess, and his blood was flowing rapidly. He was easily angered and irritable. If she used the three-pronged flowers again, Li Yundong would probably bleed out of all his orifices. Su Chan secretly mobilized the extreme yin qi in her body. Then, she placed her palm on the Baihui acupoint on the top of Li Yundong's head and gently massaged it 32 times clockwise and 32 times counterclockwise. The Baihui acupoint was the head of all acupoints. It was the highest of all acupoints in the human body. It was like the vent at the top of a pressure cooker. Once this acupoint was stimulated, all the other acupoints in the body would be shaken. Suchan channeled her yin qi into Li Yundong's body through the Baihui acupoint. It was like a Buddhist infusion of wisdom. His agitated qi and blood slowly calmed down. Li Yundong felt as if there was a clear spring pouring down from the top of his head. A trace of cool air seeped into every blood vessel and every strand of hair in his body. It was so comfortable that he couldn't help but moan. "This feels so good." Li Yundong sighed. "Don't talk." Suchan lectured him with a stern look on her face. Li Yundong immediately clamped his mouth shut. He closed his eyes and enjoyed the sensation. After massaging the Baihui acupoint, Suchan rubbed her palms together until they were warm. Then she placed her palms next to Li Yundong's ears and pressed them inward, covering his ears. After a while she pulled them open. Li Yundong looked at Suchan, who was standing next to Li Yundong. With this pull, Li Yundong only heard a popped sound in his ears, as if the stagnant qi in his body had suddenly been pulled out. A cool qi rose from his lower abdomen and rushed into his brain, making him feel refreshed. His ears and eyes were sharp. Li Yundong was both curious and impressed. He had no idea how Suchan knew so many massage techniques. Not to mention that each and every one of them took effect immediately. It was amazing. He wanted to ask, but he was afraid that Suchan would be unhappy. His eyes kept rolling back in his head. Suchan seemed to have guessed what Li Yundong was thinking. "I'll tell you later," she said. "Don't ask or think too much about it. Just close your eyes and empty your mind. Don't think about anything." Li Yundong nodded. He closed his eyes and let Suchan do whatever she wanted. Suchan's jade-like hands danced around Li Yundong's head, shoulders, and back. She pressed, rubbed, and pinched the acupoints on his head, shoulders, and back. The strength of her hands varied from strong to weak. When it was strong, Li Yundong felt as if he was going down a waterfall. Not only did it not hurt, but it also made him feel like he was drinking fine wine. It was so good that he wanted to scream and scream. But when it was weak, Li Yundong felt like he was soaking in a hot spring. It was like tasting famous tea. It was so comfortable that he couldn't help but salivate. This was one of the more advanced massage techniques in the cultivation world. It was called butterfly plucking flowers. Although the name was alluring, it referred to the strength of the butterfly plucking the flowers. It could activate the yuanqi in the massager's body and stimulate the blood flow in the massager's body. After a while, Li Yundong was so comfortable that he fell asleep. As soon as Li Yundong fell asleep, Suchan stopped. She pressed one hand on the Baihui acupoint on the top of Li Yundong's head. She watched him quietly, observing the flow of qi and blood in his body. At this time, Li Yundong's essence, qi, and blood were being mobilized by Suchan's massage technique. He was unconsciously practicing minor circulation. Although it seemed easy to practice at this time, who didn't know how to sleep? But in reality, this kind of practice was the most dangerous. Because qi and blood had no thoughts, when the meridians of the human body were not fully developed, the flow of qi and blood was random and disorderly. It was like a stream of water flowing in the wilderness. The slightest carelessness could cause qi and blood to suddenly flow from one meridian to another, from one acupoint to another, overflowing and becoming a raging flood. This was the most terrifying thing in cultivation. Qi deviation. Only people who had practiced cultivation could develop their meridians and turn them into rivers. Only then would the qi and blood in their body automatically flow according to the direction of the riverbed. At that time, they wouldn't need someone to monitor them from the side. The reason why cultivation was as difficult as ascending to the heavens was because it was difficult for cultivators to find someone they could absolutely trust to become a Taoist partner and perform dual cultivation. But once they found a Taoist partner and performed dual cultivation, cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort. Li Yundong was like this now. He had the Runyuan Jindan as a foundation, and the little fox Suchan was silently guiding him. If other cultivators on the road of cultivation found out about this, they would probably gnash their teeth in hatred and jealousy. Every time there was a sign of unrest in Li Yundong's qi, Suchan would use her remaining hand to press on the acupoint in front of the qi flow. The qi in Li Yundong's body seemed to have a direction, and it continued to flow according to Suchan's guidance. After 16 cycles of this minor circulation, Li Yundong slowly woke up. He let out a long sigh, and the chi in his mouth shot out like a straight arrow. He sighed. If I could do this every day, I'd be as happy as an immortal. Chapter 26. Suchan nodded her head like a rattle drum. Yes, of course. Li Yundong studied Suchan closely. After the massage, the girl's face was flushed, and there was a thin layer of sweat on the tip of her nose and forehead. She looked exhausted. Li Yundong's heart ached and he was touched. We'll talk about it later. Look at how tired you are. Sweat? Suchan wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and smiled. That's the qi circulation in my body. It's not from exhaustion. Qi circulation in my body. Li Yundong suddenly remembered how Suchan had taken down Air Lu. Suchan, how do you know all this? Did your master teach you? Suchan nodded and said proudly, of course, my master is amazing. Did your master teach you Chinese medicine and massage as well? Li Yundong asked. Suchan thought for a moment. My master taught me the art of cultivation. But medicine carries the Tao, and the Tao manifests itself through medicine. You're not wrong. Suchan nodded. That's right. Your master is an amazing person, Li Yundong said. When Li Yundong praised her master, Suchan beamed with joy. Of course, my master is so beautiful. Your master is prettier than you. Li Yundong asked curiously. Suchan's eyes narrowed into slits. My master is 100 times prettier than me. Li Yundong burst into laughter. 100 times prettier than you? How is that possible? How can there be such a beautiful woman in this world? I don't believe it. Suchan's eyes widened. But it's true. In my eyes, you're the prettiest woman in the world, Li Yundong said, pinching Suchan's nose affectionately. Suchan lowered her head sheepishly. No, I'm ugly. Li Yundong feigned anger. Who said that? Suchan pursed her lips. My master said it. Li Yundong froze, then burst into laughter. No way. Your master must be jealous of you. That's why she said you're ugly. Suchan had been cultivating in the mountains since she was born. Before she met Li Yundong, she could count the number of people she had met with on 2 hands. How could she possibly know the difference between beauty and ugliness in this world? She had never heard anyone praise her beauty since she was a child, so she didn't think that she was beautiful at all. However, her master had repeatedly warned her not to show off her beauty to the world. Her master had attacked her appearance more than once or twice, which made her feel that she wasn't beautiful at all. That was why she was worried that Li Yundong would dislike her all day long. Nonsense. My master would never treat me like that. Suchan retorted subconsciously. Nonsense. My master would never treat me like that. She's the best person in the world. Li Yundong deliberately put on a straight face. What about me? You're the second best person in the world, Suchan said sheepishly. Li Yundong looked disappointed. Only second? Suchan stuck out her tongue and whispered guiltily, hey, let me tell you a secret. My master is actually very mean to me, even though I know she's doing it for my own good. If you work a little harder, you might be able to surpass my master and become the best person in the world. Li Yundong burst into laughter. He grabbed Suchan's arm and dragged her to the vanity in the bathroom. Then, he pointed at Suchan's face in the mirror and said, see for yourself. Suchan washed up in the bathroom every day, so naturally, she had seen her own face. She blinked. I see myself. What's wrong? He leaned close to Suchan's face and said with a smile, look at you. You have a pretty oval face, a pair of watery peach blossom eyes, a bright red cherry mouth, and fair and tender snow-white skin. Many women dream of having a face and figure like yours. Even if they had plastic surgery, they wouldn't be able to achieve your beauty. Those movie stars would die of inferiority if they were to compare themselves to you. Suchan's heart skipped a beat at Li Yundong's compliment. Her face flushed, and she stared at herself in the mirror with misty eyes. Subconsciously, she also thought that she was a little bit pretty. Am I really that pretty? Suchan murmured. Li Yundong stared at Suchan, of course. That's why I said there can't be a woman 100 times more beautiful than you in this world. Your master must be jealous of your beauty. Suchan still didn't want to hear Li Yundong speak ill of her master. She pouted and said, "That's not it. My master is a real beauty. You'll understand when you meet her." Li Yundong smiled. He didn't refute Suchan's words. After Suchan finished speaking, she suddenly remembered that when she was cultivating in the mountains, her master had repeatedly told her that if one day she walked in the secular world, she must not use her beauty to swagger through the streets. This was the true meaning of this sentence. Since ancient times, beautiful women had always been the source of the jealousy of the heavens. Of course, Little Fox understood this saying. She immediately understood the painstaking effort her master had in telling her this. She was afraid that she would encounter evil cultivators who coveted beauty. Suchan was suddenly reminded of how good her master was. Tears welled up in her eyes. Li Yundong panicked as he watched from the side. Hey, why are you crying?" Suchan looked at Li Yundong with tears in her eyes. "I miss master." Li Yundong shuddered. He stared at Suchan for a long time. His eyes were filled with pain and struggle. After a long time, he clenched his teeth and sighed. "Well, you should go back and see her." Suchan grabbed Li Yundong's arm. "You don't want me anymore?" Li Yundong froze. "Didn't you want to leave?" Suchan wiped her tears away. "Who wants to leave?" Suchan said angrily. "I haven't harvested yang energy yet." Li Yundong's worry turned into joy and he said with a smile, "Didn't you say that you missed master?" Suchan made a face at him. "I was just saying." Li Yundong looked at Suchan's happy and angry face, and his heart was filled with love. Suddenly he thought of something and sighed. "Now do you know that you are a great beauty?" he said. Suchan shook her head. Suchan's temper was like the weather in April. In the blink of an eye, it had changed from cloudy to sunny. She giggled and said, "If you say so, then so be it." Li Yundong stared at Suchan and sighed. "A beautiful girl like you will definitely have a lot of men chasing after you. And I'm just saying, if one day you don't like me anymore, you have to tell me in advance." Suchan looked at Li Yundong strangely. "Why would I dislike you?" Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "I'm not handsome, I'm not rich, and I don't have a rich father or mother either." Suchan was even more confused now. "What does that have to do with me?" Li Yundong's smile grew even more bitter. "Aren't all girls like that these days?" Suchan said decisively. "That's because they have eyes but can't see. You're the best person in the world." Suchan said decisively. When Li Yundong heard this, he was suddenly so moved that he had the urge to cry. His heart ached and his emotions surged. He forced a smile and said, "Why did you become the best again? You've surpassed your master so quickly?" Suchan stuck her tongue out. "Your cooking is much better than my master's." Li Yundong laughed, but he was still a little worried. "You really don't dislike me?" he asked. Li Yundong stared into the girl's eyes, trying to see through her heart. Suchan also stared at Li Yundong. She smiled like a flower. "I was afraid that you'd dislike me, but you're worried about me. Why would I dislike you?" Li Yundong asked. Suchan sighed and looked at Li Yundong timidly. "I caused you so much trouble. I'm so afraid that you'll think I'm a troublemaker and throw me away." Li Yundong laughed and patted Suchan's head with a sigh. "For a girl like you, even if you poke a hole in the sky, no one will have the heart to blame you." Suchan nodded. When Suchan heard this, she smiled. "So you're saying that you won't blame me?" "Not at all." Li Yundong laughed. Suchan grabbed Li Yundong's arm and swung it back and forth. "I told you you're the best," she said. Li Yundong only felt warm in his heart. He looked at Suchan as if he was looking at an unparalleled treasure in the world. He thought to himself, nowadays such a girl is almost extinct in this world. Li Yundong, you must cherish her, or you will be struck by lightning. If you love a girl, you should work hard for her. Li Yundong suddenly felt that he shouldn't live a muddle-headed life anymore. He should work hard to earn money and make a name for himself, for Suchan, and for himself. "Suchan, I won't let you down," Li Yundong said resolutely. "I'll make a name for myself and prove that you made the right choice." Although he didn't know why she wanted to stay by his side, this beautiful misunderstanding made him make up his mind and make up his mind. Once a person had ambition, their spirit, chi, and spirit would be different. Suchan only felt that there was a heroic and compelling aura coming from him in an instant. His eyes were bright, deep, and distant. Suchan had only seen this kind of aura from her Shirshu. It was a kind of heroic spirit that believed that he could defeat all things in the world. Cultivators knew all too well how terrifying and powerful heaven and earth were. So they were all in awe of heaven and earth. But this was not conducive to cultivation. Cultivators talked about changing fate, and Gu Hong of the Danding sect believed that man can conquer nature. People must have the heroic spirit to defeat heaven and earth, to defeat everything in the world. That was the best state of cultivation. And Li Yundong was in this state now. Ambition. Ambition. Once a person set an ambition, the primal chi in their body would naturally be mobilized, releasing an extraordinary aura. Suchan stared at Li Yundong blankly. She suddenly thought, if Li Yundong can really cultivate with his current state and the help of the Renyuan Jindan, wouldn't there be a great master in the cultivation world in the future? As soon as this idea came to her, Suchan was stunned. She quickly kept repeating in her heart, no, then wouldn't my Renyuan Jindan be wasted? But if I give the Renyuan Jindan to Li Yundong, it seems that I won't feel as bad as before. Suchan was keenly aware of the changes in her heart. She suddenly became very conflicted. Chapter 28. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Li Yundong climbed out of bed and yelled into his room, I'm going to class. He wasn't even sure if Suchan, who had been frightened by him, would come out of the room again. But to Li Yundong's surprise, almost as soon as his voice rang out, the door opened and a beautiful woman came out. Her face was red and her head was low. She walked up to Li Yundong and pulled his sleeve with her hand. Li Yundong let out a sigh of relief. I thought you weren't going to come out, he said with a smile. Suchan raised her head, her eyes flowing. She murmured, you can't do this in the future. I promise, Li Yundong said, smiling sheepishly. I won't. Let's go. I'm going to be late. Then he strode towards the elevator. Suchan followed behind Li Yundong, cursing herself for being so useless. Didn't I make up my mind to teach him a lesson so that he wouldn't even think about doing anything to me? But why did my heart go soft the moment I saw him? If I keep this up, I'll have sex with him sooner or later. If his Yuanyang body is destroyed, not only will the Renyuan Jindan be wasted, but my Yuanyang body will also be destroyed. That would be a double loss. Suchan followed behind Li Yundong, her face full of worry and confusion. Li Yundong had no idea what was going through Suchan's mind. He walked quickly all the way to the school. As soon as he entered the teaching building, he saw two people angrily coming out of the classroom, talking as they walked. Nana, don't be angry, Chencheng said. The round-faced beauty, Feng Na, said angrily as she walked. That lecherous old man. How dare he have ideas about me? I want to kick him in the groin. Li Yundong's kick was so satisfying. Changcheng pointed a finger at Li Yundong. Speak of the devil, she said. Feng Na ran towards Li Yundong. Hey, I found you. As soon as Li Yundong saw her, he felt a headache coming on. He smiled bitterly and said, Madam, what's the matter? Have you solved the problem of my expulsion? Feng Na snorted. Not yet, but it will be solved soon. In order to help you, Feng Na put down her pride and begged Director Qian for help. But that old pervert actually wanted Nana to have sex with him. Changcheng, who was sitting beside her, said quickly, in order to help you, Feng Na went to beg Director Qian. Feng Na frowned and glared at Changcheng. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. Changcheng's face was full of grievance as she murmured, I was afraid that you would be a good person for nothing. Li Yundong frowned and said angrily, this guy really doesn't learn his lesson. After that, he turned his head and looked at Suchan. You should have used a little more force last time. Suchan raised her eyebrows and said, okay, I'll go and kick it again. Li Yundong, Feng Na, and Changcheng were all taken aback. Li Yundong quickly pulled her back. Come on. I was just saying. Don't take it seriously. If something really happens, no one will be able to get away with it. Feng Na sighed and said resentfully, these days scum are in power, and the good people are bullied. What kind of world is this? Don't worry, I'll find a way to help you solve this problem. I promised you I'll help you. Li Yundong nodded at her and smiled. Then I'll have to trouble you. Feng Na quickly left with Cheng Cheng. Nana, what are you going to do now? Cheng Cheng asked. Feng Na frowned and thought for a moment. I have an idea. Cheng Cheng's eyes lit up. What idea? Go find Zhou Qin. Feng Na said. Didn't you say that you would never go find her? Cheng Cheng said with a look of disdain. Feng Na raised her head and laughed. That was then, this is now. Li Yundong watched Feng Na and Cheng Cheng leave, then said to Su Chan, that girl is kind of chivalrous. Li Yundong had no idea that the reason Feng Na was trying so hard to help Li Yundong solve this problem was because she wanted him to make a fool of himself at the exchange meeting and break a boulder on his chest. Su Chan nodded. Yeah, she really is a good cauldron. Li Yundong shot Su Chan a glare. Don't call a girl a good cauldron just because she's a girl, okay? Su Chan stared at Li Yundong in confusion. Why? All women in the world are cauldrons. As soon as Su Chan finished speaking, silence fell over the classroom. The students around them stared at Su Chan and Li Yundong in shock. Li Yundong wanted to cry, but no tears came out. This girl is fine at home. Why does she keep saying things like this when she's outside? Li Yundong's face was burning. He dragged Su Chan and ran into the school building. Suddenly, he heard a burst of strange laughter coming from behind him. He finally made it into the classroom and sat down in the back row. When Sun Li saw him, she froze for a moment. A strange expression appeared on her face, as if she had just remembered what had happened this morning. She walked up to him, trying hard not to laugh. Yo, Casanova, she said. Li Yundong's face burned at Sun Li's smile. How could I not? He said shamelessly. I'm about to be expelled. Sun Li's face darkened at the mention of the incident. She looked at Li Yundong and sighed. You're too much of a troublemaker. Li Yundong smiled bitterly. It's always been me who comes looking for trouble. I'm such a low-key person. Why would I go looking for trouble? Sun Li glanced at Su Chan, who was standing beside Li Yundong. I'm afraid it's going to be hard for you to keep a low profile, she said meaningfully. Li Yundong twitched his nose and sniffed the air. Why do I smell something sour? Wait, it seems to be coming from you. Sun Li stomped her feet angrily. Li Yundong, good luck to you. With that, she turned around and walked away. Li Yundong watched Sun Li leave. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. Li Yundong, are you going to be expelled? A boy in the front row turned around and asked Li Yundong with a serious look on his face. Li Yundong glanced at the boy. Yeah, he said lazily. They'd been classmates for a year. But today was the first time they'd spoken to each other. Then what are you going to do? The boy asked in surprise. Li Yundong sneered. It's going to rain, and my mother is going to get married. What else can I do? Just let it be. If this place doesn't want me, there will be a place for me. If this place doesn't want me, then I'm going to the railroad. Li Yundong's classmates burst into laughter. A girl who looked just like Li Yundong turned around and said, no way. You're so funny. You can't be expelled just like that. Li Yundong was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. Are these people treating me like a clown for fun? He rolled his eyes and no longer bothered with these boring fellows. His classmates saw that Li Yundong was in a bad mood, so they stopped trying to strike up a conversation. Instead, they lowered their heads and started chatting. It was getting closer and closer to the start of class. The classroom was packed with people, except for a few empty seats next to Su Chan. Su Chan was too pretty, and her performance had been too tough. The boys didn't dare approach her, and the girls didn't dare approach her either. They were afraid that they would become a foil to her. When Zhou Qin and Ding Nan walked into the classroom, they were stunned. They hadn't expected there to be so many people in the class. They glanced around and immediately headed for Li Yundong's seat. Hello. Excuse me, please. Zhou Qin's voice was surprisingly soft. When Li Yundong looked at her, the corner of her mouth curved into a smile. This surprised the students around them. Zhou Qin had always been known for being serious in speech and manner. Why was she so gentle today? She even smiled at this guy? Didn't Li Yundong confess his love to Zhou Qin and she rejected him? Could it be that Zhou Qin wants to go back to him? It can't be, right? At this time Li Yundong had the little fox Su Chan, so he was very satisfied. He really felt that all the beauties in the world were just floating clouds. He stood up, smiled slightly, and nodded to Zhou Qin, indicating that she should go over. Zhou Qin looked straight into Li Yundong's eyes. She was surprised to find that the look in his eyes was surprisingly pure. There was no trace of the shock, greed, or possessiveness that other men had when they looked at her. She had never seen such a pure look in the eyes of other men before. It was as if they were looking at the flowers and trees on the street, or the birds and clouds in the sky. Zhou Qin was momentarily dazed until Ding Nan nudged her gently from behind. She snapped out of her daze and lowered her head. Her long black hair fell over her shoulders like a waterfall, covering half of her face. But Li Yundong could see a hint of crimson through the cracks of the black waterfall. When Zhou Qin and Ding Nan sat down, the commotion caused by the appearance of these two top-notch beauties slowly died down. But not long after, a boy followed them into the room. He frowned and looked at the empty seats next to Zhou Qin. His eyes swept past Su Chan's face and then fell on Li Yundong. "Hey classmate. I'll trade places with you." The boy shouted at Li Yundong without any trace of politeness. Li Yundong was still thinking about the possibility of being expelled when he heard the voice. He looked up and saw that the boy was handsome, tall, and dressed in famous brands. The girls around him were all staring at him with infatuation. Look, it's Lu Chuan," they whispered to each other. Look, it's Lu Chuan." Li Yundong thought. "He's so handsome. I heard that his family is super rich. He's the second generation of a rich family. Sigh, handsome and rich, what a big gold ingot. Whoever snags it will hit the jackpot. He's also good at basketball. He's got the reputation of little Rukawa Kid." Li Yundong sneered inwardly. Come on, not everyone with the surname Lu is Rukawa Kid. He can be a hooligan too. Li Yundong wanted to tease Lu Chuan, so he pretended to be surprised and pointed at Lu Chuan. Ah, aren't you that guy? Hey, you look like an action star. Let me think. Which action star are you? Lu Chuan chuckled inwardly. Of course not, he said modestly. Seeing Li Yundong's serious expression, the surrounding students all looked at Lu Chuan's face curiously, trying to figure out which action star he looked like. Lu Chuan straightened his back under the scrutiny of others, his face full of anticipation. Li Yundong snickered inwardly. He smacked his head and said loudly, "Oh, I remember now. You look like Sister Muta Ran." As soon as Li Yundong said that, the smile on Lu Chuan's face froze. The surrounding students burst into laughter. He really is an action star. Ding Nan, who was drinking her milk tea, spat it all out on the floor. She was rocking back and forth in laughter. Zhou Qin, on the other hand, turned her face away and covered her mouth as she giggled. A trace of anger flashed in Lu Chuan's eyes. But to maintain his composure in front of a beautiful woman, he maintained his smile. Unfortunately, it was an awkward smile. It was as dry as cement. "Hey, did you hear what I said to you just now?" Lu Chuan coughed. Li Yundong pretended to be confused. "What did you say?" "It's fine if I didn't hear it." Lu Chuan pointed at Li Yundong's seat. "I'll switch places with you." "Why should I switch places with you?" Li Yundong asked. Lu Chuan sneered. He pulled out a Hermes wallet from his Armani pants and pulled out a few large bills. He waved the bills in front of Li Yundong's eyes. "Here." Li Yundong took the bills and plopped down on his seat. Then he turned to Su Chan, who was sitting next to him, blinking her eyes. She had no idea why the people around her were laughing just now. "Oh my," Lu Chuan said. "It's rare to see someone coming over to give you money." Lu Chuan's face paled when he saw that Li Yundong had no intention of giving up his seat after taking the money. "Hey, you took the money and then move." Li Yundong turned around and stared at Lu Chuan in confusion. "What? Didn't you say you were going to give me money?" Lu Chuan's head was spinning with anger. "I gave you money so you could give up your seat. You took the money, so you should give up your seat." Li Yundong laughed. "Did you just say that? Did I say that I would give up my seat?" Li Yundong laughed. How dare you play with me, he yelled. Li Yundong smiled and waved the bills in front of Lu Chuan. Hey, how about this? I'll give you the money, and you get out of my sight. What do you say? That's my money. Lu Chuan growled. But you gave it to me. Li Yundong said. That's the money I asked you to give up your seat to me. Lu Chuan said. But I didn't agree to give it to you. Li Yundong laughed. Lu Chuan was getting dizzy from Li Yundong's teasing. His chest rose and fell violently. Fine, fine, he said through gritted teeth. I don't want the money. I'll save it to buy you a coffin. Li Yundong didn't hold back. Fine, I'll buy it and burn it for you. Lu Chuan was shaking with anger. His fists were clenched tightly. He glared at Li Yundong for a long time. Do you have a death wish? Chapter 29. He gritted his teeth, pulled out all the money in his wallet, and waved it at a boy behind Zhou Qin. I'll buy your seat, he said. Do you want to trade with me? The boy looked at the colorful banknotes and realized that there were at least a few thousand of them. As the saying goes, money moves people's hearts. He quickly snatched the banknotes and smiled at Lu Chuan. Boss, I'll follow you from now on. Lu Chuan didn't seem to mind. He waved his hand at the boy, motioning for him to leave. After the boy left, Lu Chuan swaggered into his seat and sat down. He looked around as if he had just done something amazing. He didn't notice that Zhou Qin and Ding Nan, who were sitting in front of him, were looking at him with ridicule and disdain. I used to think that young Master Lu was rich, sunny, and had a good upbringing. He was a good choice, Ding Nan muttered to herself in disappointment. Now I see that he really is a nouveau riche. Not only does he have poor upbringing, but he's also so stupid that it makes people's hair stand on end. But that Li Yundong, who usually doesn't show off his talents, Ding Nan said in a low voice. Ding Nan nudged Zhou Qin with her elbow and said tentatively in a low voice, Hey, young Master Lu is really rich and overbearing. Do you want to deduct points or add points for me this time? Zhou Qin smiled noncommittally and glanced at Ding Nan faintly. Her meaningful gaze seemed to have seen through all of Ding Nan's little schemes in an instant. Ding Nan smiled sheepishly. Why are you looking at me like that? Nothing, Zhou Qin said. Get ready for class. The teacher is coming. At that moment, Lu Chuan, who had been sitting behind Zhou Qin, leaned over and said with a smile, Qin, there's a party at my house the day after tomorrow. Why don't you and Nan Nan come together? Zhou Qin turned around, and there was a sense of distance and displeasure in her posture and eyes. Do I know you well? Lu Chuan's face turned purple. He forced a smile and said, Qin, don't be like this. We're friends. Zhou Qin's eyes became colder and colder. She glanced at Ding Nan from the corner of her eyes, and Ding Nan immediately understood. She sneered and said, Young Master Lu, you can't even tell that our Zhou Qin is rejecting you so obviously. Do you have to say something worse to make you happy? Sai, as a person you have to give yourself face. Don't be cheap. Li Yundong, who was listening, shook his head in his heart. Ding Nan is indeed beautiful, but her mouth will cause her big trouble sooner or later. She's too mean. However, scolding this idiot Lu Chuan was quite satisfying. Without waiting for Ding Nan to finish, Zhou Qin turned her head and gave Lu Chuan a cold look. Lu Chuan clenched his fists so tightly that his nails almost pierced into his flesh. The smile on his face was extremely ugly, but he was not willing to be rejected like this. He had no choice but to take a roundabout way and said, Nan Nan, are you going or not? Ding Nan glanced at Lu Chuan and smiled. If Zhou Qin doesn't want to go, why should I? Lu Chuan's eyes twitched. He smiled apologetically and said, This time I've invited a few big stars. Jiang Liren, Xin Yu, Cheng Weidong and Dongfang Yu, who is a great rock singer. It would be a shame if you guys don't go. Ding Nan was speechless when she heard this. She turned around and looked at Lu Chuan in surprise. Not bad, she said. They're all A-list stars. Then she looked at Zhou Qin and asked in a low voice, Are you going or not? Zhou Qin opened her red lips and spat out 2 words, No. Ding Nan shrugged helplessly at Lu Chuan. There's nothing I can do. You have fun with the other stars. Lu Chuan was furious. and his face became extremely ugly. He looked at the backs of Zhou Qin and Ding Nan and gnashed his teeth in hatred. He kept cursing, why are you pretending to be so virtuous? Sooner or later, I'll strip you naked. Let's see if you can still pretend to be noble then. Lu Chuan's heart was filled with rage when he felt someone staring at him. He turned around and saw Su Chan looking at him curiously. Lu Chuan stared at Su Chan's face greedily. How can there be such a beautiful girl? Why haven't I seen her before? Just as he was about to strike up a conversation with Su Chan with what he thought was the most handsome smile he could muster, Su Chan suddenly said, "Your glabella is dark and your eyes are sunken. You must be addicted to women, right?" Lu Chuan's smile froze. He was so angry that his whole body was shaking. The low laughter around him only made him angrier. Li Yundong held back his laughter and pulled Su Chan aside. "Don't talk. If you have nothing to do, then go to sleep." The anger in Lu Chuan's eyes grew more and more intense. The look in his eyes grew more and more venomous. He glared at Li Yundong's back and gritted his teeth. "You little bastard, why are you being so arrogant? I'll deal with you sooner or later." In the blink of an eye, he came up with an idea. He snorted twice and slumped back into his seat. Finally, he stopped trying to strike up a conversation with anyone else. This class was about social psychology. Even though the teacher was good at teaching, Su Chan still felt drowsy. So she collapsed in her seat, buried her head in her hands, and fell into a deep sleep. Zhou Qin, who was listening to the class, suddenly stood up and walked past Li Yundong. She was going to use the restroom. After letting Zhou Qin pass by, Su Chan curled up in her seat and fell into a deep sleep. Li Yundong, who was listening to the class, felt bored as well. He turned his head and saw Su Chan sleeping soundly. She was snoring softly through her nose and her ears were twitching. She looked adorable. Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh. He remembered the qi circulation method that Su Chan had taught him. He closed his eyes and started qi circulation on his own. What he didn't know was that this kind of qi circulation was extremely dangerous. The slightest mistake could lead to qi deviation. He had only been able to complete the qi circulation because Su Chan was watching over him. If someone disturbed him at this time, he would be in unimaginable trouble. Su Chan was sleeping, so Li Yundong didn't know how dangerous it was. So he started practicing in a daze. Just as his qi was about to reach the Shanzhong acupoint on his chest, Zhou Qin suddenly returned. She wanted to walk past Li Yundong, so she whispered to him, "Li Yundong, excuse me." But Li Yundong was in the middle of his qi circulation, so how could he hear her? Naturally, he didn't move. Zhou Qin frowned. She didn't want to force her way past Li Yundong, so she reached out and patted him on the shoulder. This slap had nearly caused a fatal disaster. Li Yundong shuddered. The qi in his chest suddenly started to run wild like a wild horse. This was the most terrifying qi deviation in cultivation. If it was light, it could lead to paralysis and insanity. If it was serious, it could lead to death. Li Yundong trembled all over. The qi in his body was going berserk. His meridians swelled, and he felt like he was about to explode. Zhou Qin noticed that something was wrong with him. She couldn't help but move a little closer and pat him on the shoulder again. "What's wrong?" With this slap, Li Yundong suddenly raised his head and opened his eyes. His eyes were full of bursting blood vessels, which were extremely red. He looked like a devil, terrifying and frightening. Zhou Qin was so scared that her legs gave way and she fell to the ground in front of Li Yundong. Although Li Yundong was in a state of qi deviation, he hadn't completely lost his mind. He barely managed to control the qi in his body. "Get out of my way," he said to Zhou Qin in a low, pained voice. Zhou Qin didn't understand what had happened to Li Yundong. She was so scared that she just sat on the ground and stared at Li Yundong in a daze, unable to react. Li Yundong couldn't control himself anymore. He let out a pained cry. "Get out of my way. Now, get out of my way." Zhou Qin hurriedly stepped aside. Li Yundong rose to his feet. He felt like a burning fireball. All he wanted was to find a faucet to wash it off. But Lu Chuan, who was standing behind him, saw what was happening. Lu Chuan thought that this was a heaven-sent opportunity for the hero to save the damsel in distress. He quickly stood up and slapped Li Yundong on the head. F***ck. Why are you so fierce to a beauty? Do you have any manners? The slap landed on the Bai Hui acupoint on the back of Li Yundong's head. All the qi in Li Yundong's body seemed to be guided, rushing madly into Li Yundong's brain. Li Yundong couldn't control himself anymore. He let out a beast-like roar. His whole face turned purplish red, and blue veins popped up all over his body. It looked like they were about to explode at any time. The most frightening thing was that blood was slowly flowing out of his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. The first signs of qigong deviation were chaotic qi, followed by bleeding from all 7 orifices, and finally when the qi in the body reached the jiaozhi acupoint, it meant that the person was done for. There was no cure. Not even the gods of the great all-embracing heaven could save him. Lu Chuan took a step back in fright at the sight of Li Yundong's horrifying appearance. But he quickly realized that he shouldn't have backed down. Did this guy really have the guts to kill him? Lu Chuan puffed out his chest and sneered. What are you being so fierce for? Come at me if you have the guts. The murderous look in Li Yundong's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Right now, all he wanted to do was vent his anger on the person he hated the most. He couldn't think of any other consequences. At that moment, the teacher and students in the classroom were staring at Li Yundong in horror. The teacher had completely forgotten about the lesson. The chalk in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Li Yundong pounced on Lu Chuan like a tiger and picked him up with one hand. Then with another leap, Li Yundong jumped 3 rows from the back of the classroom, holding Lu Chuan up against the wall. Li Yundong clenched his other hand into a fist and threw a punch at Lu Chuan with a sinister grin. If Li Yundong's punch landed, Lu Chuan would be reduced to a pile of meat paste in the blink of an eye. Chapter 30. Just as the thought flashed through his mind, Li Yundong's fist abruptly changed direction and smashed into the side of Lu Chuan's head. Everyone in the classroom felt as if someone had taken a sledgehammer and smashed it against the wall. The floor shook from the impact. When Li Yundong pulled his fist back, some of the sharp-eyed students gasped at the sight of Li Yundong's fist smashing into the wall. Li Yundong tossed Lu Chuan aside. He saw Suchan lunging at him, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and hurt Suchan. Don't come any closer, he yelled. Then he dashed out of the classroom like a madman. Suchan was shocked and anxious. She jumped from the last row of the classroom to the front row. Her body was as light as a swallow on the water. The students around her were in an uproar. No way. Qinggong? Holy shit. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? As Suchan chased Li Yundong out of the classroom, the students in the classroom began to talk about it. It was very lively. Only Zhou Qin was left standing there in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking, but she suddenly took a step forward and chased after Suchan. Fortunately, Li Yundong didn't run too far. He just rushed into a men's bathroom not far from the classroom. There was a student who was taking a dump in the washroom. When he heard the commotion outside, he opened the door in curiosity and fear. He saw a man with a face full of blood standing beside the sink, madly using his head and fists to hit the marble countertop. The thudding sounds were like the beating of a drum. The student was so scared that he didn't even have time to wipe his butt. He pulled up his pants and ran out. When Zhou Qin chased Li Yundong to the men's room, she stood at the door. She wanted to go in, but she was a shy girl, so she was embarrassed. But then she heard Li Yundong's painful moans coming from the bathroom. She was so anxious that she didn't know what to do. While she was running around in circles, she suddenly saw a boy running out of the bathroom with his pants up. Zhou Qin immediately grabbed the boy and asked, "Student, what happened inside?" When the boy pulled up his pants, he remembered that he hadn't wiped his butt. He was already very depressed, and now he was stopped by the girl. The pain in his heart could not be expressed in words. He angrily broke away from Zhou Qin's hand and shouted, "If you want to know what's going on, you can go in and see for yourself." As he spoke, he fled as though he was flying. Zhou Qin frowned, stamped her feet, gritted her teeth, and rushed into the men's room. As soon as Zhou Qin entered the men's bathroom, she saw that Li Yundong's face was covered in blood, and the clothes on his upper body were soaked in blood. He was like a raging Hulk. He punched the mirror forward with both fists, smashing it into pieces. Then he punched down again, smashing the marble countertop. Zhou Qin was so shocked that her face turned pale, and her mind went blank. Is he still human? How could a human have such great strength? Su Chan had been observing Li Yundong's movements calmly. Seeing an opportunity, she suddenly flew forward and patted the back of Li Yundong's neck. Li Yundong's body stiffened, and then he suddenly twisted his body and punched behind him. The punch was so fierce that even though Zhou Qin was 3 or 4 meters away, she still felt a fierce wind blowing on her face, causing her beautiful hair to flutter. Like a spirit snake, Su Chan circled to the other side of Li Yundong, took out a piece of her hair with one hand, and then tied it next to Li Yundong's ear. The hair was like a golden needle, firmly pricking the Tianju acupoint next to Li Yundong's ear. Li Yundong's body trembled and finally, he fell softly to the ground and passed out. Su Chan let out a sigh of relief and put Li Yundong's body on her back. Only then did she turn around and stare coldly at the dumbfounded Zhou Qin. If you dare say a word about what you just saw, she said, I'll take your life even if I have to travel thousands of miles to the ends of the earth. There was a terrifying murderous intent in Su Chan's cold words. But Zhou Qin was the daughter of a wealthy family, so how could she be threatened so easily? Zhou Qin came back to her senses and raised an eyebrow. She was just about to say something when Su Chan suddenly jumped out of the window with Li Yundong on her back. Zhou Qin was scared out of her wits. Ah, she screamed. We're on the 5th floor. Zhou Qin rushed to the window and saw that Su Chan was carrying Li Yundong on her back, unscathed, and had disappeared like a gust of wind. Zhou Qin stood in front of the window in a daze. She didn't even notice that a boy had entered the room behind her. She stared at Su Chan and Li Yundong's disappearing silhouettes in a daze. Her body trembled slightly. She couldn't tell if it was from shock, fear, panic, or a trace of excitement and fanaticism that lurked in the depths of her soul. Who the hell are you, Li Yundong? Su Chan flew back home with Li Yundong on her back. She looked calm on the outside, but deep down she was nervous and regretful. She couldn't stop blaming herself for not telling Li Yundong not to practice qi in public. She carefully looked at Li Yundong's face, touched his pulse with her hand, and then felt the direction of Li Yundong's breath. At this time, the qi in Li Yundong's body was either rushing upward to attack the Baihui, Shanting, Tianchong, and Chongling acupoints in his brain, completely turning him into a fool, or it was attacking the foot Shaoyin kidney meridian and foot Taiyang bladder meridian in the lower half of his body, making him paralyzed and unable to get out of bed. Su Chan's heart ached at the sight of Li Yundong. She found the bathroom, grabbed a few clean towels and wiped the blood off Li Yundong's face. Then she pressed one hand on the Huagai acupoint on Li Yundong's chest, and the other on the Qihai acupoint. Su Chan had once heard from her master that the Huagai acupoint was located in the middle of the 2 intersecting lobes of the human lungs. It was located above the heart and below the throat. This acupoint was the only place where the qi of the human body flowed upstream. It could be said that this acupoint was the unparalleled key between the 2 capitals and the throat. When a person was angry, they would feel a surge of qi rushing to the top of their head. This surge of qi originated from the Qihai acupoint, broke through the Huagai acupoint, passed through the Shunting acupoint, and finally reached the Baihui acupoint. This surge of qi would confuse the normal flow of qi in the human brain. This was why people often lost their rationality when they were angry. Some people were good at cultivating their bodies and minds. When they were about to lose their temper, they could forcibly suppress their anger. This was all thanks to the strong barrier that was the Huagai acupoint. Su Chan's pressing on these 2 acupoints was equivalent to blocking the surging qi of Li Yundong's body from rushing up and down. She slowly released a burst of pure yin qi from her palm into Li Yundong's body. As soon as this qi came into contact with Li Yundong's qi, the pure yin qi met the yuanyang qi of a boy. The 2 instantly melted, and the surging qi in Li Yundong's body calmed down. Li Yundong's pained expression turned calm and peaceful. The bulging veins all over his body calmed down, and the qi in his body began to flow on its own. Su Chan let out a sigh of relief. Her eyes were still fixed on Li Yundong, observing his condition. Li Yundong had just come back from the gates of hell. The violent qi in his body was like a tamed flood, flowing back into their respective meridians. After the qi had automatically circulated for 4 or 5 small circulations, Suchan was surprised to find that the qi in Li Yundong's body had begun to automatically flow along the meridians and acupoints of the small circulations. There was no need for anyone to deliberately guide it. It was as if the violent flow of the qi had forcibly widened and deepened the meridians in Li Yundong's body. It was like a torrent that was originally rushing in the wilderness had forcibly rushed out a deep and wide riverbed, and then naturally followed the direction of the riverbed and became docile. Suchan was very surprised. She muttered to herself, "This guy can't be so lucky, can he? Can qi deviation be a blessing in disguise?" When ordinary people cultivated qi, if they wanted to strengthen the qi in their body, they had to put in a lot of effort and hardships. If they wanted to deepen and widen the meridians in their body, it was something that could only be encountered by chance. Just relying on hard work was useless, it required opportunities. However, Li Yundong had done something that ordinary cultivators couldn't do even if they begged for it. He had actually done it by accident. Suchan suddenly felt a little jealous. She poked Li Yundong's nose and said angrily, "You're lucky. How could you run into this kind of dog shit luck? Let's see what you'll do next time you get qi deviation. I don't care anymore. If you're so good, you can continue to circulate the small circulations like this. There won't be any problems." After saying that, she stood up and was about to leave, but after taking 2 steps, she still felt worried. The qi in Li Yundong's body was currently repairing the damaged meridians. If she took another wrong step, Li Yundong would be doomed, and Suchan wouldn't be able to save him. Suchan thought for a moment, then walked back. She pouted and said, "Well, it's not that I don't trust you. I just don't trust you to waste my Renuan Jindan. You're a reckless guy. You have to understand this." After that, Suchan muttered, "What a reckless guy. How dare he practice qi in public? Isn't he courting death? He almost got me into trouble." Although that was what she said, Suchan looked at Li Yundong with concern. She stared at him without blinking, afraid that he would make the slightest mistake. When the qi in Li Yundong's body had completed the 36th cycle, a faint colorful light suddenly surged from his body, as if he was wearing a colorful cloud. Suchan was shocked. Jindan qi. Her eyes were full of envy and jealousy. At this time, the colorful light meant that the Renuan Jindan in Li Yundong's body was completely absorbed, and the Renuan Jindan would complete the final attack and transformation of Li Yundong's body. After that, Li Yundong's essence qi and blood would be several times stronger than before, and the strength of his body would also be several times stronger. After looking at it enviously for a while, Suchan gradually calmed down and couldn't help but sigh. Master is right. Some people's good fortune is really incomparable. Chapter 31. Li Yundong chuckled at the sight of Suchan sleeping. He couldn't help but reach out to caress the girl's smooth, fair cheeks, but his hand stopped halfway, fearing that he would wake her from her sweet dreams. Li Yundong stared at Suchan for a long time before his gaze fell on the blood-stained towel. Only then did he remember what had happened to him. Everything that had happened to him during his qi deviation was still vivid in his mind. Li Yundong reached out and touched his nose, eyes, and mouth. He found that his hands were clean and there was no blood. He breathed a sigh of relief and sighed with lingering fear. "It's really horrible. I didn't expect to be slapped to death when I was lucky." Li Yundong thought back to how he'd almost killed someone when he'd gone berserk. He couldn't help but shiver. If it wasn't for Suchan, I'd be dead already. But the thought of it made his heart skip a beat. Why did I have such a huge reaction when I was cultivating qi? Why did every other qigong cultivator have the same reaction? And why did I bleed from all my orifices in just one day? No matter how stupid Li Yundong was, he could vaguely sense that the situation was so strange that it was inexplicable. He stared at Suchan and thought, is she the one who brought all these changes to me? Li Yundong was in a daze for a while. He wanted to ask Suchan, so he pushed her shoulder, only to hear the little girl groan in a daze. Her eyelids opened a slit, and she murmured, "Yundong, are you awake?" "Yeah, I'm glad you're okay. I'm so sleepy." Li Yundong smiled and put the question at the back of his mind. If you're sleepy, go into the room and sleep. Su Chan wiggled her body, but she couldn't even open her eyes. No, I'm too sleepy. Carry me in. Li Yundong scooped up the little fox, feeling as light as a feather. Su Chan wrapped her arms and legs around Li Yundong like an octopus. She rubbed her head against Li Yundong's chest and snored adorably. This little girl. Li Yundong chuckled silently. He put Su Chan on the bed. The girl was clinging to his arm tightly. Her clothes were a little messy, and the corners of her clothes were peeking out. Li Yundong felt as if a faint fragrance was floating in the quiet, dark bedroom, teasing his heart. Li Yundong stared blankly at Su Chan, lost in thought for a moment. Li Yundong glanced at the nightlight alarm clock in his bedroom and realized that it was only 10 o'clock in the evening, which was the best time for nightlife. In the past, he would have been either playing online games or fighting on the battle net at this time. But now, all the lights in his house were out, and there was no sound at all. Ever since Su Chan moved into his house, Li Yundong realized that his entire life had changed. Li Yundong, who was a huge fan of video games, suddenly found them boring. He didn't want to play them anymore. All he could think about was this mysterious little beauty with an unknown identity. While Li Yundong was deep in thought, he saw the little fox turn around and lie down on the bed. She curled up into a ball and hugged the blanket tightly to her chest. Her perky buttocks were perfectly round and alluring. He turned on the air conditioner for Su Chan, then quietly backed out of the room. He stared blankly into the living room for a while, then fell asleep in a daze. The next morning, Li Yundong woke up and touched his phone in a daze. He glanced at the time and suddenly jumped up. It was already 10 o'clock. Half of the morning classes were already over. Li Yundong rushed to the bathroom to wash up. As soon as he pushed the door open, he saw Su Chan standing in front of the dresser with a dazed look on her face. She had one hand on her messy hair, and the other was slapping her mouth. She was yawning non-stop. Su Chan was wearing Li Yundong's pajamas, which were loose and loose. Li Yundong could even see the girl's fair chest through the gaps in her clothes when she yawned. It was a dazzling sight to behold. For a moment Li Yundong was in a daze. He had forgotten the question he had wanted to ask Su Chan and just stared at her blankly. Su Chan turned her face to look at Li Yundong. Just as she was about to greet him, she suddenly found a problem. She jumped in front of Li Yundong, opened her eyes wide and carefully looked at his face. Li Yundong felt a little uncomfortable under Su Chan's stare. He couldn't help but touch his own face. What's wrong with me? Su Chan burst into laughter. She pulled the confused Li Yundong over to the mirror and pointed at his face. Look, look. Li Yundong stared at himself in the mirror. What's wrong? He asked. Su Chan's eyes turned into crescent moons. Haven't you noticed that your face has gotten thinner? Li Yundong froze. He took a closer look at his face. Sure enough, his face had gotten thinner. He couldn't help but rub his fat belly. He realized that he'd lost a lot of meat as well. I've gotten thinner? Li Yundong asked in surprise. Su Chan grinned from ear to ear and nodded heavily. Yes, yes. Li Yundong chuckled. He looked at himself in the mirror and said, I look pretty handsome after I've slimmed down. Su Chan made a face at him. Isn't it because of me? She said. Li Yundong was stunned. What does it have to do with you? But then he remembered that ever since he'd met Su Chan, he'd been fighting and being chased by people almost every day. It would be strange if he didn't lose weight after all that exercise. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the thought. I can't believe this little girl has the nerve to ask for a reward. But he was happy to see Su Chan happy. Isn't this the purest form of happiness between a boy and a girl? Rejoice in your happiness, and grieve in your sadness. In her opinion, it was precisely because her Renyuan Jindan had transformed Li Yundong's body, and then she had massaged his meridians with the three-pronged flower technique, that she had helped him unclog his meridians and forced him to passively practice the minor circulation of qi. Furthermore, the qi deviation had indirectly deepened Li Yundong's meridians, allowing the blood qi to flow through his meridians and take away the filth that had accumulated in his body in the past. That was why Li Yundong had become so thin. This was why, since ancient times, Taoist immortals in China had all been thin and sage-like, but no one had ever heard of a Taoist immortal with a fat head and big ears. In the eyes of doctors, people gained weight because their meridians were blocked. Once their meridians were normal, they would automatically lose weight. Cultivators' meridians were all well-developed and unobstructed, so they couldn't gain weight even if they wanted to. Li Yundong used to be a complete otaku, and he didn't like exercise. Naturally, his blood qi would circulate slowly, and his meridians would not be smooth, so he would gain weight. But now, after the Renyuan Jindan had transformed his body was changing every day. It might not be obvious in 1 or 2 days, but it was obvious in 3 or 4, 5 or 6 days. Li Yundong's originally chubby face now had the contours of his cheekbones, and his chin had become a little pointy. When a person lost weight, his spirit qi and spirit came out. Li Yundong looked at himself in the mirror and sighed. I almost can't remember what I looked like when I was thin. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong with a wide smile on her face. She looked as if she was enjoying his happiness, but in reality, she was secretly delighted. He's thinner, which means that he's already at the end of the middle stage of the second tier of qi refining. Li Yundong thought to himself. There were 3 stages to the second heaven of qi refinement. The first stage consisted of nourishing the essence, consolidating the spirit, and repairing the meridians. With the help of the Renyuan Jindan, Li Yundong passed the stage without a problem. Now, the middle stage consisted of meridian expansion, qi condensation, and freedom. Li Yundong had been possessed by the devil before, and had accidentally completed the most difficult part of the expansion sutra. What he needed to practice next was to learn how to condense the majestic qi in his body into a ball, so that he could have the divine strength of 1,000 pounds with every move. Then he would learn how to use the qi freely in actual combat, so that he could summon it at will and leave it at will, unlike Duan Yu's 6 meridians magic sword, which was sometimes ineffective. It was early morning, the time when all living things were awake and full of vigor. The morning sun shone through the window onto Li Yundong's face, making him look like he had been sprinkled with a layer of golden powder. His whole body was bursting with energy, and even his hair exuded a heroic aura. Su Chan stared at him in a daze. Her heart skipped a beat. In the 27th verse of the Vajra heart, Shakyamuni said that men have 7 treasures, and women have 5 cavities. It's easy for men to cultivate, but it's hard for women to cultivate. This sentence was not wrong at all. Li Yundong had the body of a man with 7 treasures. With the help of the Renyuan Jindan, he would immediately surpass most mortals in the world. In just a few days, he would break through the first heaven and enter the middle stage of the second heaven. If I get the Renyuan Jindan, I'm afraid I'll have to go into seclusion for a month to digest the medicinal power of the Jindan. Su Chan couldn't help but feel a little jealous. But then she remembered that the faster Li Yundong progressed, the closer it would be for me to harvest yang energy to nourish yin energy. At the thought of this, Su Chan couldn't help but hesitate and panic. Li Yundong stared at himself in the mirror for a long time, until he felt like he was being too narcissistic. Then he turned around and smiled at Su Chan. He struck a pose and said, "What do you think? Can I be a movie star now?" Movie star? Su Chan asked in confusion. Li Yundong waved his hand dismissively. Forget it. It's nothing. It's the weekend. Let me take you out to play. When Su Chan heard this, her eyebrows lit up, and her eyes turned into crescent moons. Okay. Where will you take me? Li Yundong's phone rang before he could think of a place to go. He ran to the living room to answer the call. Li Yundong, am I your personal secretary now? Sun Li's voice came from the other end of the line. I can't afford to keep a big-name sweetheart like you. Li Yundong chuckled. Get out of here. Sun Li said angrily. Everyone's here for the rehearsal for the exchange today. You're the only one missing. Senior Feng Na from the student council has her eyes on me. You can do whatever you want. No way. Li Yundong said in an exaggerated voice. Isn't today Saturday? Sun Li laughed angrily. Li Yundong, it looks like you really should go see a doctor. Haven't you recovered from that rampage in the classroom? It's Monday. Li Yundong froze. He glanced at the time on his phone and smiled bitterly. Did I sleep for 2 days again? Time flies by too quickly. Hey, class rep. Can you ask Feng Na if she's done with me? If she hasn't, I'm not going. Li Yundong said. Come and ask her yourself. I don't give a shit about your business. Sun Li snapped. Chapter 33. Even Zhuang Hui, who was dancing on stage, couldn't help but stare at Li Yundong. Who is this guy, she asked. Since ancient times, the more beautiful a woman was, the more yin qi she had. And the easier it was for her to be attracted by a man with exuberant yang qi. Vice versa, the more heroic and indomitable a man was, the more yang qi he had. And the easier it was for him to be attracted by a woman with exuberant yin qi. That was the saying, beauties love heroes and heroes love beauties. As soon as Su Chan showed up, Zhuang Hui, who was dancing on stage, started to make mistakes as well. The two of them were as stiff as zombies on stage. Li Yundong's appearance made Zhuang Hui start making mistakes as well. Su Chan took a sip of the milk tea Li Yundong handed her. What are they doing? She asked. They're dancing, Li Yundong said with a smile. Can't you tell? The little fox's eyes widened in shock as she exclaimed. What? Aren't they supposed to be dancing to the gods? Zhuang Hui heard it loud and clear. Her foot slipped, and she fell to the floor with a loud clang. She subconsciously braced herself with her hand so that her fake breasts wouldn't be damaged, but then she heard a crack on her wrist. The students and teachers watching the performance below the stage were in an uproar. Feng Na was so happy that she was rocking back and forth. Good fall. Good fall. Why didn't you damage her fake breasts? Hey, that's my line, Cheng Cheng said, annoyed. Feng Na ignored Cheng Cheng. She ran up to the stage and pretended to be concerned. Hey, what's wrong? Where did you hurt yourself? If you break your hand, how are you going to dance? Wouldn't that be a waste of all the effort you've put into rehearsing? Zhuang Hui's face turned purple with anger and hatred. Tears welled up in her eyes. One of the teachers couldn't take it anymore. He stood up and pointed at Su Chan's back. Where did you come from? He yelled. Why are you causing trouble? Get out. You're not welcome here. I didn't want to, Su Chan said pitifully, turning around to face Lin Sanjiu. Her pitiful expression immediately softened the sanctimonious teacher's spine. He coughed dryly and changed his expression as fast as flipping a page of a book. Is that so? That should be a misunderstanding. Just pay attention to your volume. Don't be too loud. When the surrounding teachers and students heard this, they couldn't help but feel a deep sense of disdain. Only the opposite sex? No humanity. Li Yundong didn't know about the feud between Zhuang Hui and Feng Na, so when he saw how nervous Feng Na was, he turned to Su Chan. Look at you, he said. You always cause trouble the moment you open your mouth. Su Chan pouted and said, Then I'll go and cure her. With that, she hopped onto the stage, walked forward and reached out to grab Zhuang Hui's arm. Zhuang Hui had made a fool out of herself, and she hated Su Chan to the core. She ducked away from Su Chan and yelled angrily, It's none of your business. Su Chan turned around and looked at Li Yundong helplessly. Li Yundong had no choice but to follow suit and leap onto the stage. His posture was so cool and powerful that it made the eyes of the people around him light up. Li Yundong smiled at Zhuang Hui in a friendly manner. Hey, don't be mad at her. Show her what you got. She's really good. Zhuang Hui nodded. Don't be mad. When Zhuang Hui saw Li Yundong smile at her, she was so nervous that her heart felt like it was about to stop beating. She even forgot about the pain in her wrist and nodded blankly. Su Chan reached out to grab Zhuang Hui's palm and forearm. It's fine. It's just a dislocated wrist, she said. As she spoke, she exerted force with both her hands, and with a click, she received it. Zhuang Hui cried out in pain as if she had just woken up from a dream. Su Chan put Zhuang Hui's hand down. All right. It's fine. Zhuang Hui tried to move her wrist. My hand is fine, she yelled in surprise and joy. The girls on the stage surrounded Zhuang Hui. They looked at Zhuang Hui's hand curiously, then at Su Chan with awe, but most of them were looking at Li Yundong. Zhuang Hui's hand was healed, but she didn't want to thank Su Chan. In her opinion, Her hand was injured because of what Su-chan had said. She wanted to use this opportunity to get closer to the handsome guy in front of her. Zhuang Hui was pretty with big eyes and willowy eyebrows. When she smiled sweetly, she looked a little charming. "Hey handsome, what's your name? How come I've never seen you before?" Feng Na thought to herself. This slut just happens to be flirting with men. How shameless. But why does this handsome guy look so familiar? Wait a minute. Isn't the beauty beside him? No way. He's Li Yundong? Li Yundong smiled at Zhuang Hui. "I'm Li Yundong. Nice to meet you." Zhuang Hui's eyes suddenly widened, and the expression on her face was as if she had seen a ghost. The corners of her eyes twitched, and she said awkwardly, Your name is Li Yundong?" Li Yundong smiled. "That's right." Zhuang Hui yelled, "That's impossible. Aren't you supposed to be fat?" Li Yundong frowned. His eyes grew cold. "Haven't you heard of the saying that a man who has been away for 3 days should be looked at differently?" Zhuang Hui secretly regretted saying such a stupid thing, causing the handsome guy in front of her to treat her coldly. Li Yundong turned his face and said to Feng Na, "Sister, have you helped me with my business?" Before Feng Na could say anything, they heard an angry voice from below the stage. It was Director Qian. "Li Yundong? What are you doing up there? Come down now. Don't delay the rehearsal." Director Qian's face darkened. He had already made up his mind to fire Li Yundong. Otherwise, Li Yundong would be a ticking time bomb. Who knew when Li Yundong would expose the fact that he had once seduced Su-chan? Even if this incident wouldn't affect his position, he was still an educator. Who didn't care about their reputation? Who wasn't afraid of being criticized behind their backs? After saying that, Director Qian lifted his head angrily, as if this action would bring him prestige. Zhou Qin walked up to him with a smile. "Director Qian, I have something to discuss with you." Director Qian turned his head, and a bright smile bloomed on his face. "Oh, it's Zhou Qin. What is it? Just say the word." "I heard that you're going to fire Li Yundong?" Zhou Qin asked. The smile on Director Qian's face froze. "How did you know?" Zhou Qin smiled but did not answer. She said, "Can you do me a favor and not fire him?" Director Qian cursed inwardly. What's so good about Li Yundong? Why are there so many beautiful women on his side? Zhou Qin was famous for her cold face and cold heart. She had actually helped Li Yundong again and again. Did she really like Li Yundong? Director Qian's face darkened. He didn't say anything. Zhou Qin frowned. She had thought that Director Qian would agree immediately. She hadn't expected the old man to put on airs. Zhou Qin suppressed her impatience and asked, "Director Qian, if I may ask, has there been any conflict between you and him?" When Director Qian heard this, he immediately said righteously, "Of course not. Do you think I'm the kind of person who would use public office to avenge a personal grudge? No, I just think that this student is too much. Look at how much trouble he's caused in just a few days. Plus, he's been bringing a girl who isn't even from our school around the city all day long. That's a terrible influence." Zhou Qin's lips curled into a cold smile. "Even if you want to fire him, you have to wait until the conference is over, don't you? Right now, he's taking Zhao Yujian's spot. Please don't hold it against him." Director Qian looked Zhou Qin up and down, then suddenly smiled. "Fine. For your sake, I'll let him go until the conference is over. But let me make it clear. I'll kick a black sheep like him out the moment I hear about it." With that, he turned around and left. Zhou Qin was furious, but she was so well-mannered that it couldn't be seen on her face. Ding Nan, who was next to her, spat and sneered, "What the hell? The way he looked at you just now, it was as if he wanted to eat you." Zhou Qin pursed her lips and didn't say anything else. She just looked at Feng Na from afar and nodded. Feng Na was overjoyed. She also nodded at Zhou Qin to express her gratitude. Zhou Qin had finished what Feng Na had entrusted to her. She was so upset that she turned around and was about to leave. Ding Nan, who was beside her, asked curiously, "Aren't you going to watch the next show?" Zhou Qin frowned. "No." Ding Nan winked at Zhou Qin. Feng Na put in so much effort to get him to take over. "Aren't you curious about what Li Yundong is going to do?" Zhou Qin stopped in her tracks and turned around. She crossed her arms over her chest and frowned. Just for a minute. Ding Nan smiled, but she thought disdainfully, hypocrite. On the stage, Feng Na patted Li Yundong on the shoulder and said, "You're in luck. It's time for you to fulfill your part of the bargain. Be a good girl and wait for me," Li Yundong said to Suchan. Suchan nodded obediently and jumped off the stage. After taking a sip of her milk tea, she waved at Li Yundong and said, "Good luck." Li Yundong smiled at her. His smile was so bright that it made the hearts of the girls around him skip a beat. Li Yundong turned to Feng Na and asked, "What should I do?" "It's simple," Feng Na said. "First, do a few fighting stances with your teammates, and then complete a special show. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."